Chapter 538, Good Jull, Crazy Jull. Big flipping thanks to our new patrons. At Lolzman, D rank. At Zach, D rank. At Wycheck Nyman, D rank. At Joseph, D rank. At Zetsuin No Tempest, E rank. Capturing Delphine wasn't easy. She was a fighter, and a good one at that. Her resources and connections were vast, but once she was put in chains, there were no more leeways. In her mind, those captors could be anyone or anything. She was worried over the Greybeards and the Dragonborn being all a big scheme of rumors and false news, but the involvement of the Thane of Winterhold didn't make anything understandable. Either way, if there is a Dragonborn, then she should be the one who guides them as the last sworn blade, or something along those lines. But now, everything evolved into the worst-case scenario. She was captured after a tough chase. She was shipped on a boat to a large vessel, thrown in a cage, and next thing she knew, she was in Winterhold. It was all too infuriating to be captured by the likes of those superstitious Nords. Winterhold is now a storm-cloaked territory, which is not entirely safe for a Breton like her who may get treated as a Western spy. Well, at least it is not the Thalmor who got her. Either way, Delphine soon realized that it is John Dare who is her captor. The ship she was led down from was a Dare fleet ship, one with no sail. Also, those who escorted her were the rumored Black Pigeons, a shady group of people that operate in the underworld actively. After her last encounter with John Dare when she stole the Dragonstone, she tried to purchase as much information as she could on him from Rift Inn, but she found herself under the scope of the Black Pigeons since that day. It was alarming, but now that she discovered that they work for John Dare, it all became easy to put together. Still, she can't be interrupted by those narrow-minded people. There is a greater cause she is fighting for, and she can at least make a deal with those people if possible. The world is facing a great danger with those abominable dragons on the loose. The pride of a warlord can't be what dooms the world now. Gagged and chained, Delphine was led to the Black Room, Winterhold's infamous underground prison. She was put in a room with one table and two chairs, chained to the table, and left for a few uncomfortable hours alone. A usual interrogating strategy, but very effective nonetheless. Eventually, her interrogator walked in. A tall, beautiful dark elf with eyes of mismatched colors and an expression that can't be read. Her face was beautiful like a doll, not in a good way. She was giving bad vibes to Delphine every time their eyes met. Delphine didn't want to talk first, so Jelliner wasn't talking rather, just simply staring. Knock, knock. The door of the room has two light knocks sounding, but didn't open up. Jelliner didn't want to react to them, but in the end, she dropped her shoulders. Sorry about that. My sister is very impatient, same people, you see. She spoke to Delphine, then looked closely. Hungry. Delphine didn't try to react, but suddenly the smell of the room changed as if 100 corpses passed by. Delphine's empty stomach felt like it was turning on her as she unintentionally fell from the chair in a sudden reaction. See, you would have withstood that with a stable stomach. My spiders hate washing up, so it is a bit hard to clean them when they have to nest in the caves across the hold and hunt the whole time. Jelliner said mindlessly, making Delphine, whose stomach fluids were out of control, glare at her with a grudge. Don't worry, they can't eat humans. We put a curse on them so that they don't threaten the surface. Their main diet is Falmer, though. Jelliner went on and on about her inhumane practices and experiments with spiders and Falmer. Delphine took each and every word as a threat, but it was just Jelliner letting off some stress. In the end, Jelliner switched topics. So, now you know this much about me. Tell me about you, she said gleefully. Delphine kept with her silent treatment, but felt that the look on Joel's face was still as apathetic as ever. If you're still hungry, I can ask them to make you a sandwich, maybe some hot cocoa. I want to speak to the one in charge. Delphine finally spoke. Oh, it speaks. Joel clapped her hands in surprise. Who is the one in charge? This is Winterhold. It is Thane John Dare, right? I want to see him. Hey, are you hearing this? It wants to speak with boss. Jelliner laughed as she looked towards the door. I know you hear me. Whoever you are out there, Thane John would be interested in what I have to s. Punch! Out of the blue, Jelliner punched Delphine right in the face, causing her to break free from the table she was chained to and crash into the wall. You fucking speak to me in here. For no apparent reason, Jelliner was totally pissed, as if the demons were raving in her head. She walked to Delphine, picked her up, and threw her across the room, then back on the table, and put her on the chair once more. Delphine expressions formed the images of pain, shock, fear, questioning, then finally worry. I am sorry. What were we saying? Jelliner was sitting in front of her, as if nothing had happened. Actually, Delphine found herself chained once again, as if she was never thrown off the table in the first place. There was no blood on her face, and her nose wasn't broken. I tend to forget stuff a lot. I'm not so good at interrogating people, so I just hope you help me out. So, let's continue. The spiders, right? They live around here or there. They're really a free-spirited bunch, nothing like rumors about them. Raised them myself, you see. Jelliner kept going on about her spiders and ranting about meaningless stuff. Delphine was stealing some glances around, trying to figure out what kind of cursed place she is in or figure out what she experienced just now. This is not something she can just walk out from easily at this rate. Look, I don't want you to worry. The spiders, sometimes they speak, but just ignore them. They say all manner of idiotic stuff, and don't let them near your ear. They're very curious about ears. Oh, if you are a Thalmer agent, you are dead meat as well. No, I am not Thalmer. That's what I wanted to say. Oh, I see. You should have started with that. I'm truly sorry. I'm not good at this, you see. Thalmer, Blades, spies, it all confuses me. Well, even if you are a former member of the Blades, you don't need to worry, my spiders won't harm you for... I didn't say that. Delphine denied. I didn't say I was a former member of the Blade. No, you said so. I didn't. No, wait. Maybe the spiders. They heard you say it in your head. They can read thoughts too. Jelliner said apologetically. I didn't say that in my head either. Delphine was firmly denying her identity as a Blade member. Oh, too bad. Jelliner stopped the clumsy act and returned that scary apathetic look again. Sharp pain. That's all that Delphine felt. It came from her arm. She looked towards the table where her arms were chained and found a bloody knife that cut off her right wrist along with a part of the table. She lifted her right arm up and went pale as she felt the phantom pain of losing a hand followed by the real pain. She screamed from the dreadful sensation, but her arm was grasped by Jelliner, who was still holding the bloody knife. Did you lie to me? Did you just lie? Slash. And the other wrist was cut just like the first. You fucking whore. Nobody lies to me. Nobody. A series of slashing and stabbing followed right on. Delphine fell on the ground, trying to fend off the attacks, as Jelliner rode her with eyes that carried a hint of mad ecstasy. Her pupils shrunk as her smile widened thinly, revealing the most insane psyche a person can have. In the end, Delphine's eyes were stabbed and she was blinded, but while she was choking on her blood, she opened her eyes. She was there, just sitting, still sitting as if nothing happened, as if it was all a bad dream. I know it is hard. Being the last member of a hunted organization, I really sympathize with you. Now you know about me, and I know about you. Let's be friends, okay? When John comes home from his trip, I'll tell him about you. Don't worry, you'll be moved upstairs. Good cell, clean air, no spiders. You don't have to... No! Get away! Get away! And it happened. Delphine freaked out. She struggled, screamed, and tried to break away. It was all pointless. The chains were too strong. She was too tired. Hey, what's wrong? Jelliner tried to comfort her, but the latter was cowering away as if she was avoiding a monster. But suddenly, Delphine saw a third shadow in the room. A shadow that looked exactly as if it was Jelliner, and it was holding a knife right behind her. Scream. In the next room, 3 figures were watching how the interrogation was going. Did we break her? Jelliner asked. Oh, we did? We did long ago. Alina replied. It is fun, Miranda added. Alina was standing in the middle, holding the skull of corruption in one hand and Joel's hand in the other, drawing nasty thoughts from her mind. The skull of corruption has the ability to clone people and cause nightmares to come to life. Alina used Jelinek as a medium to let her crazy come to life in two images, the lovable chatterbox and the obsessed psychopath. Meanwhile, Miranda was here just for the horror show, her favorite genre. Remind me again why we're doing this? Joel asked. John wanted us to give her some special treatment until he returns. Remember? Alina said, I hoped I could really do that, not have some illusions doing it for me. Jelinek complained. We still want her alive. TSK, let's stop screwing around. We have duties to attend to. Strange enough, Jelinek was bored from the show and went away, causing Alina's magic to stop functioning. Alina didn't really care, so she hid the staff away and followed Jelinek out, leaving Delphine in the holding room. What's wrong? Alina asked. Too many spies are roaming the hold recently. Some are even recruiting locals. Jelinek spoke her concerns. So we have traitors? Yes. It is problematic since we do not target our people, so we need hard evidence to draw them out. Alina and Jelinek fell to silence. They were expecting to deal with such cases after the recent rise of the population, as those who are not natives to Winterhold and those who came with hidden agendas from the start are acting right now. Our enemies are moving together again? What could be their motive this time? Alina asked. John's investment bank is making the others scared. We are now moving on a rapid pace outside the hold and will eventually control a large chunk of the Stormcloak territory before going into the new holds. Alina nodded. But such a move would need a whole lot of funding. We are the experts of money, and we know about every septim going in and out. This can only be done by someone with heavy pockets. You suspect the faction that keeps sending killers? Jelinek asked. Maybe listen, I have a plan. Do you have a location on any cell of those assassins? Alina questioned. We suspect a place. Why? I have some ideas for a counterattack, and Alina walked by to Delphine's cell. I think our new best friend in here can have a role to play in the bigger scheme of things. John wouldn't mind, right? Jelinek shrugged her shoulders as she handed Alina the key to Delphine's cell. Alina effortlessly opened it and stepped inside to see Delphine standing in the furthest corner of the room, holding a chair as a weapon and drenched in a cold sweat. You're real? Alina grinned widely and shrugged her shoulders. Don't know. Maybe you can tell me. Am I real? Or am I in your head? To be honest, I was real LY in your head just a while ago. Those illusions and stuff, but I think we got off on the wrong foot. Now how about this? You do something for us, and we let you meet our Dragonborn. Wasn't that what you after all along? John may have said to keep Delphine locked and spoiled, but Alina had another thing in mind. Something that may be way worse than just some torturous lodging. Chapter 539. Sincerely. LY/2DX3DX. Discord. GG/GKCKVA7. Instagram @Don_Dokmasi. Twitter @Eldokmezi22. If Delphine was able to shake off the company's hidden forces for a month only to get caught by John's otherworldly knowledge, then she is no ordinary person. She is capable and dangerous, so it is better to control her. Alina foresaw a good outcome from using Delphine's talents. She was still shackled and restrained under the watchful eyes of a dozen agents as well as Miranda and Jelinek. So, I speak to the Queen of Winterhold. Yes, you do. I go by many names, but as a humble person, you can call me Dame Alina or Lady Dare. And why was I brought here? Why did I get tortured? As my husband would say it, to loosen you up a bit. We have to introduce ourselves properly before we come down to business, right? Now you know what we can do, just in case you have any funny ideas in mind. Stealing the horn of Jürgen Windcaller, for example. Alina elaborated. Delphine looked at Alina suspiciously, and then looked at Jelinek, who was smiling at her, then twisted that smile into a vicious grin. Miranda, who was daydreaming in a corner alone, and each and every agent who were aiming small, lethal crossbows at her. I can already see, but when I tried to steal the horn, I didn't mean to get under your skin. I was only trying to establish a connection with the Dragonborn. We are well aware of that. To be frank, the likes of you are a bad influence on the Dragonborn, and he knows it. That's not for you to judge. My. Why are you trying to prevent the Dragonborn from achieving his destiny if it is true? You think the dragons are not a real threat, Or do you people from Winterhold only care about power and leverage? You think so? I know so. Why else would John dare take the Dragonborn under his wing and keep his identity a secret? Delphine became more aggressive as she tried to walk to Alina. An agent was about to hit her with a baton, but Alina raised a hand. You are right, Delphine. All we care about is power, leverage, and money. A Dragonborn is a force beyond reckoning. You don't want such power to be manipulated by an empire or an Almarai dominion, don't you? Then why are you manipulating him? He has a destiny to make, and you just want to use him for your gains. Use him for our gains? Let me tell you this. The Dragonborn is Winterhold's core asset, and he is the most respected and loved person in this hold. I will never share him. We will never let anyone even fancy the idea of thinking that they can have the ability to influence him. He is our beacon of hope. Sister, I think you are having conflicted emotions. Jellinar, shut it. Alina cleared her voice and returned her focus on Delphine. There are too many lines in Winterhold, and we want you to respect them. Prove that you can, and you will be able to meet the Dragonborn. He is looking forward to seeing you too, believe me. Alina extended her offer by tossing a scroll towards Delphine. What is that? Delphine asked. Details of your mission. We want you to infiltrate a band of killers. We suspect them to be a cult of some sort, and we need to know where they come from. Alina said. Delphine looked around her, then back to Alina again. I think you have excellent manpower already. Why me? Alina smiled gleefully and didn't reply at first, but then she spoke her intentions. Because you are expendable. Simply saying it would make anyone rage around. Delphine frowned in anger, but Alina was right. She doesn't hold any value other than her skills, which are not that rare in Winterhold, making her easily replaceable. Each agent we train requires time and resources. We consider them as family and don't send them on suicide missions. A death cult infiltration is a suicide mission only a desperate person with your particular set of skills may comply to do, but let me tell you this, try to double-cross us, and what you experienced in the holding cell just a while ago will haunt you for the end of your days. Alina summoned the Skull of Corruption once again and cast a powerful curse on Delphine. There was no need to explain what this curse can do. My sisters will fill you in the details. Do not disappoint me, Delphine. Playing the villain was a role that became very usual in this household. John, Alina, and Jellinar. The three of them almost perfected and embraced their two-faced natures for the good of the hold. Little in her past did she think to live as a tyrant and rule with an iron fist from the shadows. Alina always abided by righteousness, but some things can't be done without getting one's hands dirty, such as ruling and protecting. As the de facto authority of Winterhold, many lives are at stake, and the 2 years she spent taking care of Winterhold alone changed her quite a bit. She learned when to be ruthless, when to be merciful, and when to dodge a bullet. She may have had her clan and the firemen's to her back, but with John around, it is amazing how much power can the presence of a single person affect things. The things she can do, and the freedoms increased, but so did the threats. John was born under the stars of the serpent. Such stars would bring about difficulties to those who lead others, thus the ancient tradition among the clans was to never give authority to those whose stars are the serpent. Leading Winterhold showed that such superstitions can be actually true. Either way, there is work that needs to be done. Jellinar and Miranda will focus on Delphine's mission, while Alina would normally oversee the company and do her important job in the college. Earlier this week, Elishka from the bathhouse delivered a piece of news that somehow upset Alina. It seemed that John and Elishka were working on a secret minor side project that no one knew about, and it touches the investment banking system. The bathhouse hostess's career was not a stable one, as most girls who desperately need money only work there for short periods of time, unlike how things used to go 5 years ago. Still, the Queen Bee's system is active. The Queen Bees is a term that refers to the most successful girls in the bathhouse who usually have beauty and talent in entertaining the guests. Their prices were always higher compared to the average girls, but just like the most, they don't work for a long time. It seemed that John had found a more devious way to employ those Queen Bees, and that was the bank for some reason. He offered current and former queen bees the opportunity to work in the bank as partnership agents. The job description is simple. Those agents would assist a number of associated clients which the bank has invested in their businesses regarding management and financial advising. In other words, those agents manage the bank's interests with the bank's customers. Now, why did John think of using those queen bees as agents? Well, it is simple. An agent's job is quite free from the company's rules. As long as there is money flow, there is a huge cut for the agent, which means this is a very social skill-related job. The queen bees are beautiful and young, giving them the advantage of being able to sway the people's decisions quite easily. The assignment of the queen bees would target large-scale businesses rather than small ones. During the first month, the bank gave out business loans and invested in small businesses like farms and wood mills, as well as large businesses like wineries, mines, trading companies, and such. The queen bees were given the green light to do just about anything as long as it is in the bank's favor, which is their backing, and this meant a wide array of things. They can pretty much form bonds with those business partners or anything they fancy. The most important thing is that the bank gets high approval rate and profit. Just how could the noble-born Alina agree on such a despicable method? Yes, she can get her hands dirty regarding anti-espionage and even killing, but this is dealing with enemies. But now, she is sending girls to seduce the business partners into getting more involved with the company. She banged her head on the desk in frustration after Alishka left with her reluctant approval. It is true what was said about business: dirty is politics and bloody is war. The DDC's control has completely overtaken the deadly triad of trade, pleasure, contraband, and arms dealing. The trade that can control the fate of nations. This now means that the company has absolute supremacy in the underworld of organized crime. Lady Boss. Yes, said the secretary entered the office as Alina raised her tired head of the office. A student from the college came by. He said that the excavation team is on its way to Sarthal. Alina's eyes widened as she looked at the calendar and found that it is today. Thanks, Sev. Like the wind, Alina took her staff and gathered her notes, then teleported out of the office to the family's house in Sarthal. From there, she rode on her snuggling griffin and flew across the city to the south where the old ruins stand. The ruins of Sarthal, a site that is very sacred to all Nords and was in the center of the college's attention recently. The clans showed displeasure regarding the mages going through a sacred ancestral ground, but it was John who called them off, saying that the Nords of today are dwarfs to the Nords of olden days, and studying their traces is honoring them rather than letting the age turn it to dust. Thus the Nords never complained, and the college got access to the ruins of Sarthal. Alina was assigned on the team as a favor to John who made this happen, and as an assurance to all Nords that this excavation will be in safe hands. On the other hand, Alina was rummaging through the notes John gave here. Instruction of what to do and where to go. Things to read now, and things only to read if she encountered certain situations. In truth, John left many things blurry in order to not spoil anything and made a few good cliffhangers of his own to motivate her. Once she arrived where the excavation site is, Alina found the students from the last season and a few teachers and researchers from the college led by Master Talfdir. She silently joined the ranks of the teacher, and when the time came, the seal on the ancient barrow was undone. Of course, the place was previously explored a few days ago to ensure its safety and relocate any important objects of study. As the students walked slowly in the old, dusty tomb, many were complaining about the lighting and the narrow passages, forcing the teachers to disqualify any troublemakers from the get-go. Those who do not take the excavation seriously are not welcome anywhere inside the tomb. The situation became better when the team delved deeper into the innermost area where many ancient murals and stone steels were found. Those who had the talent of studying and excavating ignored the rough conditions of the place and listened to the instructions carefully while Alina strayed alone further in the tomb. She has had the opportunity to explore ancient barrows before alongside John, who is an absolute pervert when it comes to ancient artifacts and treasures. He simply would stop at nothing to profile, study, and analyze all the markings and words written anywhere on these walls. He always said full exploration, max experience, especially when he explores all the possible routes first before following the right one which he already knows about. Either way, Alina followed John's instructions, and to her surprise, she found one of the fellow teachers deep inside the tomb, as John's notes said. Wait, who goes there? Students aren't allowed here. Teacher Arniel? It is me. Alina spoke. Oh, Lady Alina, I didn't realize it was you. What are you doing here? The one who met her was a balding Breton who goes by Arniel Gain, a teacher who has a bad relationship with John and always suspects everyone to be trying to steal his work. He saw Alina and hid his journal right away. The note John wrote said, deep under Sarthel, you find a man whose hair was long gone from worry and suspicion. Ask to assist him, and he will give you directions. Sincerely, John Dare. Alina did as the note said. She found Arniel Gain trying to avoid her, so she offered help, and he told her to gather and record anything she may found in the dead-end area beyond his workplace. Alina agreed and went away as she read the rest of the note. His direction leads you to a fruitless search. Do what you will, but find the amulet on the wall. Pick it up. Sincerely, John Dare. John wrote the prophecy in a provoking way just to mess with Alina. She indeed followed what he wrote and found some golden artifacts hidden in burial urns, and as she delved deeper, she found a strange wall at the end of a tunnel. Indeed, as John said, there was a totemic amulet hanged on that wall like a talisman of sorts. She carefully picked it up, but as soon as she did, screech! A noisy metallic screeching was heard from behind her. She hastily put on a protective spell and made sure to break into running, only to find that the path she came from was blocked by crude iron spikes. The sound caused the whole expedition to be alert, and the whole team came to see what happened. Alina was indeed trapped behind the spikes that ride from the ground, but that didn't mean she can just teleport out. Still, she felt strange energy coming from the amulet she held, as if it was stopping her from escaping. What in the world was that racket? Everything all right? Master Tolfter asked as he checked the strange spikes. It seems that I have activated an ancient mechanism. How clumsy of me. Alina replied. What is important is that you are all right, my daughter. Fascinating. How did that happen? I pulled this strange amulet of the wall. Alina said as she raised the amulet up. From what I can tell, it carries a very profound and mystical seal, the subject of our interest in these ruins. Marvelous, I would say. She said as she examined the amulet, and then looked at what John's note had to say. Master Tolfter can enlighten you. Sincerely, John Dare. She looked away from the note to Tolfter, who was thinking. Perhaps the amulet is important somehow. Is there some way you can use it? Tolfter asked. Alina simply checked the amulet for any curse or infection, and once it was clear, she decided to put it on. At that moment, she felt a tonal effect coming from the wall and linked to the amulet. Do you see that? Some kind of resonance in the wall. It must be connected to the amulet. I wonder, Tolfter observed from outside as Alina was acting. Tonal seals are rare. John would love to immerse himself in studying such a subject as the expert in the matter, but Alina can take all the necessary notes. She walked towards the wall and felt its energy resonating with her own, as if inviting her to use her magic. All right, Mr. Wall, your funeral. Alina simply coated her hand with frost magica and punched the hard wall for it to crumble, as if it was made of biscuits. Screech! With the wall crumbling, the spikes blocking the wall fell into their sockets. Alina observed the action of magica around her and noted a magic circuit hidden behind the ground that would channel tonal magica into the spikes, forcing them to go up, and with the amulet stuck on the wall, it created an equalizer to hinder the trap. Once Alina removed it, the trap was active, so Alina had to break the wall in order to open the magica circuit and lower the trap. Tonal magica is very effective in traps as it can detect sounds and activate the traps accordingly. That's why sneaking soundlessly may help adventuring through the old ruins easily. Either way, Tolfter walked over to Alina and observed the passage that was opened behind the wall she broke. Well, would you look at that? This appears to lead somewhere. Let's see where it goes. I'm not sure what to expect here. Please be on your guard, he said as he led the way inside. As two teachers, Talfdir and Alina were qualified to explore the path ahead. The other teachers watched over the path as they forbade the students from following. There, Alina and Talfdir walked through a narrow passage. It was dark, dusty, and depressing, but the two passed over while hovering by magic to not touch any dangerous trap. Then until they found a room, an ancient narrow room. There were an altar and 3 sarcophaguses in that room. It fit the description of a secret treasure room, but there were not treasures or any of the sort, just old, dusty, broken wares. The two mages looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders. It was rare to see such a thing on Nordic ruins, but it all changed when Alina got closer to the altar. The world stopped. The time froze. Even the dust kept hanging in the air in an eerie manner. "What is that?" Alina turned to Talfdir, but he was frozen as everything else with a lazy look in his face, as if he was sculpted. "Gleam!" Alina called for the spirit of the elder Gleam, which reacted to her, but couldn't respond. It felt better now. It seems that this is an even more mysterious trap than before. She looked at the notes and found, "Dear wife, I know you have a bad sense of your surroundings, but there is a ghost standing near the altar. Hear him out, please. Sincerely, John Dare." Alina turned away to the altar to see a silhouette forming of mystical energy. It seemed to be waiting for her to interact with it. A record. She was aware of the principle, but not the magic. Recorded magic is something akin to a rune trap, but much more sophisticated. Once she got closer to it, it reacted. "Hold, mage, and listen well. Know that you have set things in motion that cannot be undone. Judgment has not been passed, as you had no way of knowing. Judgment will be passed on your actions to come, and how you deal with the dangers ahead of you. This warning is passed to you because the Psijic Order believes in you. You, mage, and you alone have the potential to prevent disaster. Take great care, and know that the Order is watching." The vision stopped. The time felt free again, as if it got its lucidity back slowly and carefully. Alina remained still until she remembered that she also needed to breathe. Her eyes twitched and finally reacted to the words of the man from the recorded vision. Judgment, dangers, Psijic Order, disaster, and some creepy old dudes are watching. "John, what have you got me into this time?" She furiously looked into the last page in the note. "I believe in you too, wife. Sincerely, John Dare." Chapter 540, The Eye. So most of you can already tell from the title of the chapter what's about to happen. Good. Still, in some patrons' comments on this chapter, they told me that they thought that John had already acquired the eye when he rebuilt Sarthal. While the patrons are mostly smarter and sexier than the average reader, I'd like to remind you all that this didn't happen. He rebuilt the city near the old one on the way west of Winterhold, where the players randomly fight a troll or some wolves. He left the crypt of Sarthal untouched. Sneeze. Alina, you're all right? I sneeze. I hate dust. I hate walking corpses. I hate everything at this moment. The situation wasn't looking good for Alina, who started to explore the ruins alone with Gleam. There were no longer sincere, annoying notes from John, so all that she had to do was to explore the ruins on her own. Draugrs were one thing, but this particular ruin was not crawling with unordinary ones. There were hulking Draugrs and Death Lords leading a number of Draugr Scourges and Scourge Lords. It wasn't exactly a walk in the park, but nothing Alina couldn't handle. Other than Alina, who was exploring alone, Master Talfdir lagged behind as he was trying to secure anything worthy of studying. After the vision Alina experienced from a Psijic monk, she told Talfdir about what she saw, and he seemed to be hardly believing it, but encouraged her to uncover the truth about this place. She was also interested in the legacy that the Nords might have left behind to attract the attention of the Psijic Order itself. Aside from the line of Divaith Fyr's disciples, there are a few schools around Tamriel that are just as honorable and prestigious. Among them are the Greybeards of Skyrim, the Darini clan of High Rock, and the Psijic Order of Somerset. However, none could rival the Psijics in terms of foretelling and knowledge, as they are the true masters of mysticism. It is also known that Divaith Fyr and Sothasil were once members of the order. It is strange that John knew about this place and the appearance of the Sijic monks. Alina would have guessed that John wouldn't miss a meeting with those monks for the world, but he simply gave it to her. It didn't seem like something he would do. Still, she can't miss such a chance either. The Sijic monks didn't appear for a long time in the world, and she was the first person to meet them after 200 years of their disappearance. Even Nerina would die from jealousy. And finally here it was. Alina broke through all the traps and the enemies until she arrived at the largest chamber in the crypt. Wow! In all its glory, the prize of her effort stood at the other end of this as nothing she has ever seen before. A spectacle to the eyes and all the other senses as well. If she was to say it, she would lose the words as they come to mind. A hovering orb covered in the most mystical of runes rotating majestically on an array of magicka focus points. The style of the array seemed primal compared to today's applications, but its shocking power made someone with the level of Alina have a hard time breathing. Alina, watch out. Amidst the mesmerized state of mind she was in, Gleam's voice pulled her back to reality. Her awareness returned as she barely avoided a magic projectile that almost hit her face. Still, the magic managed to rip her face veil away. Bastard! Her rage was instantly unleashed as she waved her staff to return the attack almost tenfold. Her target was the Draugr that was resting down the chamber, which she only noticed just now. As John said, her awareness is terrible. Alina is a diviner mystic completely opposite to John, who is a seeker mystic. The two branches of mysticism are about gaining knowledge, one through time and the other through space. Alina was natural with divining through time, which made her sense of space become rather poor, the weakness that she couldn't manage to cover till now. Still, once a diviner mystic is triggered into battle mode, they are already several steps ahead of their opponent. Alina's attack just now was followed by another then another. The Draugr wanted to retaliate at her, but each magic he cast was broken and countered ahead of its time. That's how a diviner fights. Still, that wasn't omnipotent as people would think. She may know ahead, but she is still bound by time, and if she can't figure out a way to retaliate before the future she saw becomes present, it would be useless. Another weakness of knowing the future is not fully knowing it. For example, the resistance properties. Alina may have attacked the Draugr with magic, but to her surprise later on, it didn't even scratch the undead. Damnation! What are you made of? Teacher Alina, wait up! From behind her, Master Talfdir came in as he was out of breath. I told you not to break anything. It is of absolute importance that we owe. That looks dangerous. Talfdir was about to lecture Alina for causing a ruckus until he noticed the floating orb and the dangerous-looking undead. Duck! Alina hurriedly pulled the old man away from harm as the Draugr cast another almost instantly. I take that as this is no ordinary Draugr to cause such ruckus. Talfdir went back on his lecturing attitude. The look on Alina's face was like, no shit, but she then pointed to the large orb. That is probably its power source, she said. It seems you are right. I can sense a strong link. Talfdir agreed. One of us has to cover the other to disturb the link. I'll take the Draugr. Alina nodded and went forward while blocking another spell by a ward and repaying it with a hazardous spell freeze to bypass the Draugr's resistance, while Master Talfdir simply teleported across the chamber. The fight continued as the undead which walked off the frozen surface without even flinching. From what it seemed, this Draugr was particularly an expert of frost spells and has a high resistance to them. Game on. Alina's pride almost felt hurt as she switched from frost to the anti-undead sun magic. Her radiation spells made the Draugr wither in pain as he cast his best ward shields and started conjuring a number of frost Atranax. The towering Atranax started climbing the platform up towards Alina with the ground shaking to their heavy footsteps, and the interior of the ruin started vibrating and cracking. Alina didn't want to destroy the interior, so she acted right away. Gleam, take my staff. Alina surrendered her staff to the small fairy Gleam, who could cast its basic spells, and from her robes, she grabbed 2 grips and pulled them out with the sound of unsheathing swords. 2 deadly-looking sabers appeared in Alina's hands as she finally became serious. Those blades were Blood Scythe and Soul Render, a pair of deadly swords that are infamous for their ability to turn their wielder into an eternal berserker. These were parts of the Deathbrand set, which Alina owns. She nimbly kicked the ground and jumped like a monkey in the middle of the Atronax. Her small size in comparison to the Frost Atronax gave her the complete advantage of slipping through those Daedra without being so much hindered. Each one didn't require more than 2 slashes, as her moves were akin to a mad dancer from the east on the sounds of a raging czar. Haya! 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 Her aura conjured the wind and the storm that as Alina was dancing with breathtaking motions. Her college robe couldn't keep up with her motions as it fell off, showing the perfect slender Stalrim armor she was wearing and the hair that moved after her like a dancing ribbon. With the end of her nimble show, she spread her arms like wings with the blades in reverse grips as the last of the Atronax was put down. She joined the sabers together and faced the powerful Draugr that caused all this mess. Samgard Saran. The Draugr opened its rotten maw and spoke. Samgard Balin. Alina replied in the same language, the dragon language. It means Samgard awaits. Samgard welcomes. Reminds you of something? The Draugr became enraged as he heard Alina's reply and shrieked badly as he charged at her, shooting magic from his staff and waving his axe. Alina didn't move or dodge. She stood silent and received the magic as if she was unaffected, but once the axe strike cut through her, her image disappeared as if she was never there from the start. A decoy. Slash. The Draugr didn't even realize when he was beheaded or from where. Alina appeared behind him as the head of the Draugr flew off upward and landed perfectly on the side of her blade. Alina faced the head with a sneer as she served him true death. With no further interest, she slipped the head past the side of her blade and artistically returned the 2 sabers to their sheaths. That was incredible, Teacher Alina. Thank you, Master Tolfdir. Tolfdir stopped the spell he used to interrupt the connection between the Draugr and the large orb just to relax and take a breath before focusing on the strange floating orb and its mysterious ruins. What is that? He asked. I have no idea. Alina replied, I guess if Master Tolfdir doesn't know, then we should bring the rest of the research team down here. Tolfdir thought for a while, then shook his head. No, that wouldn't be good. Let's inform the Archmage first and cancel the excavation class for a later date. This artifact, I don't know how, but it provided the undead Draugr with unending power. It is dangerous. Tolfdir said. All right. Alina agreed and sealed the entrance to the chamber, then directed her attention to trying to identify the large orb with Master Tolfdir. She was almost certain that John knows exactly what's going on here, and he wanted her to take the credit for it. It doesn't suit Alina's style to be put in puzzles and circles, but she found this one to be a mystery that she sought out the answers. First, she tried to find a relationship between the undead Draugr and the orb, but soon discovered nothing in that direction other than unique Draugr's ability to manipulate magicka almost better than Nurina herself. Now that was something to contemplate on. A Draugr with such ability had to be someone incredible in life, but he was no dragon priest or anything of the sort. In the end, she found a writ of seal. Be bound here, Jirik, murderer and betrayer, condemned by your crimes against realm and lord. May your name and deeds be forgotten forever, and the charm which you bear be sealed by our ward. A criminal? And a charm? Something you found, Teacher Alina? HM? Nothing. It seems our friend here was some sort of condemned criminal. Alina said as she kept the sealing talisman. A criminal? I can hardly believe it. A mage of such caliber doesn't need to resort to crime. Ancient Nords honored mages like that. Well, who knows? At least there is no foreseeable clue on his lead regarding the orb. I'll return and inform the Archmage right away. Tolfdir nodded and returned to focus on the mysterious orb, while Alina looted the staff of Jirik, which was even more powerful than her own, and took the charm that was on what remained of his neck that she just decapitated. It seemed like a fragment of an ancient Nordic amulet, but its power was something to behold. Alina could feel her power soar up a few folds when she tied it around her hand, like a bracelet. So this was the source of the Draugr skill. If other mages were to find out about such an item, some of them might go crazy and try to steal it. Alina thought as she covered the amulet carefully. A powerful staff and a ridiculous amulet. John sure knew how to throw rewards in the way of his friends, just like how he guided Wolfer to a certain Dwemer ruin that made the poor guy almost go crazy. Still, Alina knew that the large orb is the mystery John wanted her to uncover. She didn't stand idle and hurriedly exited the crypt heading towards the college, but on the way back, she ran into a pair of familiar faces. "You've seen it, right? Master said you will do it." Beth spoke. Alina stopped facing Beth and Jax, who seemed to have taken their fair share of frostbites in the middle of this snowy road. "What are you two doing here?" Alina asked. "Master said to wait for you and confirm that you found the eye," Beth said. "The eye?" "Yes, he said that you will find the eye of an actual Tata and wanted us to remind you that you must take the amulet of the Draugr that was guarding the eye. So he was aware of all that was inside." "I knew it." Alina held her head, but she was somehow satisfied with her findings. "Then he asked me to give this to you," Beth said. Alina received a note from Beth that was filled with John's writings. She was fed up with his notes and didn't have the mind for his silly jokes, but while she was reading it, her face went pale in an instant. She instantly incinerated the note and took Beth by the hand, and as if to make sure the girl is safe. "Master Alina, what is wrong?" "Hush!" Alina signaled to Beth not to speak. "Is there anything wrong?" Beth spoke carefully. "Jax, take the girl home," Alina shouted, but the time to retreat was over. All of a sudden, figures emerged from the snow surrounding Alina, Beth and Jax from every corner. Humans, elves, undead, all strong and bloodthirsty. Alina couldn't see how they snuck up on her, but they didn't manage to take her by surprise. "Identify yourself," Alina shouted. The leader of the mysterious group pointed his blade at Alina. "Kill the beast and the child, capture the wife." His sinister words gave off how unnatural the man, or the creature, is, yet Alina didn't flinch one bit. She simply drew power from the amulet around her wrist and held the staff of Jirik firmly. "Want a piece of the queen, eh? And here I was thinking about some target practice." Chapter 541, Enemies from All Corners. Big thanks to our new patron at Makash Crawl, C rank. Messy, fast-paced, and bloody. This was that kind of fight that awaited Alina. She was outnumbered and isolated. She had to protect Beth and try to cover for her and Jax to retreat safely to the town. "Master Alina, I called for help, but I couldn't reach." It seemed that Beth was trying to reach anyone in the city via telepathy, but her efforts were useless, as if she was being jammed. She knew this feeling from that time in Hammerfell, when there was an interference from the soul snare spell. Careful, they are using the soul trap spells. Alina, on the other hand, was aware of the disadvantage. At that moment, a sorcerer standing behind the group of the attackers cast dark magic, which released a dozen dark chains towards Alina and the other two. Jax carried Beth in one arm, cast bound flaming wings by the other, and took the air while attacking anyone chasing him by a lava whip. Thankfully, he could protect Beth, giving Alina the space she needs to worry about herself and the enemies. At first, she attempted to conjure a number of Atranax to aid her in the fight, but no matter what she did, the dark sorcerer in the back countered it. He even managed to turn some of the Atranax against her while the others were sent back to oblivion. Bastard! Alina cast an overcharge ice spike to get rid of the annoying mage, but he warded it off almost effortlessly. "Get her! The Lord will have great use of her." One the other. The man who led the warriors surrounding her shouted at the others. Alina rolled her eyes and fried 3 of the warriors who were walking towards her with lightning. She then faced the man and spoke. "You know what? Fusaroda." Her shout was very accurate, as it left the man no leeway to even be surprised. Once the shout landed, it blasted the man far away and tore off his arm. Alina then gave off the best chain lightning spell she could use with the staff of Jirik, paralyzing more of the enemies that were chasing Jax and Beth. Now she was facing the annoying sorcerer. "You and me." She called for a duel, But the man didn't even react. It was as if his hidden face under the large hood was sunk in the abyss, without even the hint of him breathing. Maybe it was an undead mage, but Alina cared less. She cast a sunfire spell and teleported away as a few arrows landed on her location. Instantly, she appeared behind the archer, and with her blood scythe, she cut the man's arm, leg, gutted him, and split his skull. I started playing for honors, so... Her eyes landed on the mage, who seemed unfazed by the sun spell she cast at him, meaning that this foul, evil aura surrounding him is not undeath. Yet whatever it was, it is just as evil. Alina was now free from restrictions as Jax and Beth had successfully escaped. She aimed her attention at the sorcerer, and he cast multiple flame spells towards her. Once a spell hit her, she disappeared as if she was made of illusion and appeared behind the sorcerer with her blade aimed at his heart. It hit, stabbed, tore skin, muscle, and bone, and went from the other side, but the man cared even less. Alina's instinct screamed as she let go of the sword and moved her hand quickly to hold a dagger that was aimed at her side by that sorcerer. Her hand held it from the blade, but it injured her, ignoring how strong her skin was. The dagger didn't stop at this point and started digging its teeth in her palms, as if it was growing thorns, causing a strange black substance to spread through the veins of her hand. It was unforeseeable to be injured this easily and to even be poisoned with her clan's bloodline that is very resistant to poison. Alina jumped off her place, kicked with her 2 feet at the dark sorcerer, sending him a few meters away and landing badly. The man who led the party of attackers, the one who lost his arm by her shout, came towards her while carrying his torn arm and a disgusting smile forming on his face. "That's a naughty girl," he said as he placed his torn arm where it should have been, as if he is putting himself back together. In a bizarre scene, his arm started to reattach itself back where it was torn, as if the man was no mortal. This crazy scene frightened Alina, but her anger was far greater at the moment. She took out the dagger that dug itself in her right palm and puked a mouthful of dark, poisonous blood all of a sudden. The man saw that and froze, as he couldn't understand how she managed to take the poison of her bloodstream and puke it from her mouth, but as mysterious as he was, as mysterious as she is. And a glare. Alina's red, devastating glare. No man, mare, beast, undead, or even Daedra can survive that. "Ah! Aya!" The man wailed and screamed from the pain that caused his veins to pop out and burst open, gushing out blood from even his eyes. GRA * voice transformation * AH. The screams of the man changed from the normal voice of a human to the shriek of an evil being. The man was still screaming, but something else was screaming inside him. Alina focused on that and put all her focus on it as she screamed as well. Then it disappeared. Whatever was screaming inside that man, it was purged by Alina's glare. The man who stood in front of her suddenly lost his power and died on the spot. Swoosh, swoosh. 2 arrows were shot at Alina. One hit her right shoulder, and she rolled on the ground before the other would hit her. In fear of poisoning, she took out the arrow, almost immediately groaning from the pain, but managed to take a look at the archer. It was that archer, the one she butchered just a minute ago. He was standing with no cut limbs or split skull, even though there were blood traces and cut marks where she hacked him. The man didn't only get miraculously healed, but was revived. Revived? Alina didn't seem to understand what was going on, but 2 things were certain. First, these men are not humans anymore, and neither undead. They do not smell like wet dogs either, so they are not like the were beasts who have a supernatural healthcare insurance. Second, they are possessed by something evil, as when she purged that thing by her glare. Both it and its host died. That's a new threat she never even heard about. Even the dark sorcerer that annoyed oblivion out of her was standing up and taking out the sword she drove through his heart. Alina wasn't sure of what creature she was fighting, but one thing she is sure of. "You bitches messed with the wrong bitch." She spoke in rage as she turned towards the sky. "Kyne, hear my plea." Her voice tore through the wind and reached the heavens. She didn't shout the storm call shout, but as the child of Kyne just pleaded, a storm was brewed. The Staff of Jirik was a legendary artifact, and it suited the daughter of the storm very well. Alina conjured a dozen cyclones around her, making the archers' arrows all useless. The dark sorcerer started using magic to revive the fallen allies Alina took down, but the storm's frost and lighting struck them down and kept killing them. The raging cyclones roamed across the battlefield, rampaging and taking down anything in their wake. Alina was carried by the wind as the staff in her hand acted as the punishing whip of the scourge. She would take the revived enemies one after another up to her level by telekinesis, purge the entities inside them with her eyes, letting them experience the most terrible death there is. Pushing her to a corner had its limits, as Alina is a monster that is second only to John around these parts. Above all that, she was insanely powered with the amulet around her wrist. The amulet that is the axis of a forbidden legend. Who was left standing was the dark sorcerer and a few of the elites who were barely fending for their lives. They didn't scream or beg for mercy, but rather, they groaned in their demonic voices that were almost like the sound of the grinding of metal. "We will come back for you, Red Witch. Next time, our master shall make you his bride and will scotch this land back to the ruins it rose from." The dark sorcerer announced the most infuriating thing that Alina didn't really need to hear at the moment. Alina's storm settled down gradually until it was no more, but the thickening gloomy sky could clearly reflect her mood. In her wake were the corpses of those whom she purged, each in a bloody mess. The battle was so one-sided that Alina's red and black made her more like a villainous queen from Oblivion rather than the lady who was just under attack. She finally spoke. "You know how angry those words of yours made me feel, whatever you are. But know this, you are a being of pain, and this land, the land you once scorched, and this woman, the woman you so brazenly declared to belong to some man she never heard of, they can cause you pain more than whatever you experienced in your damnedest lowly life. Curse you, Red Witch! I am immortal." The dark mage said. "You think so?" She asked. "All right, you are even more stupid than I thought you are. An advice on my part, you may want to say less stupid things when that person is standing right behind you." As Alina pointed, the man didn't simply turn his head as he was certain she was trying to trick him. But that wasn't the case. There was a very angry person right behind him. All of a sudden, 2 rows of teeth bit on that man's left ear and tore it away like a beast. The man hardly flinched from this level of pain, but as he turned back, 2 daggers were driven into his guts. One went up, the other went down. The person who did that simply grabbed the sorcerer's intestines and rounded them around his neck, then dragged the sorcerer by them and slammed him on the ground. "You don't get to speak like this to my daughter." Hilda spoke every word while serving a punch to the sorcerer's face, whose hood was torn away, revealing his semi-Daedric appearance. The other elites saw the champion of their lord taken down, and all rushed at Hilda with their blades high, but there was another something greeting them. John would call that a dwarven locomotive if he saw it from the same angle those people did, but this was simply a large man wearing a full dwarven suit of armor and carrying an oversized shield that looked like the face of a train. The men were all swooped in one charge by Wulfur. Those who didn't get disabled were done by the full might or a dreadful warhammer that he swung around like a maniac. Once he was done, he stomped on the undamaged limbs of these men, completely crushing them. Those fuckers. They even came after Alina. Wulfur was so annoyed to the point where he shouted out his frustration. "Even?" Alina questioned as she walked over to Hilda. "Mother, what's going on?" Hilda stood up as she stomped on the sorcerer's head, burying it in the snow and breaking it open. "Attacks. They are attacking everywhere around Winterhold. It is like a war," Hilda replied. "A war?" Wulfur came over, dragging a survivor for questioning. These bandits appeared from nowhere. An army of them rushed over Winterhold from the east through the ice wastes. No heraldry, no flag. "We just fended them off Whispering Town an hour ago, while the rest escaped south," Wulfur said. "Bandits? Army? Hold up, guys. These are no bandits." Alina denied. "What do you mean?" Hilda questioned, but Alina didn't need to answer. Kukukuku. An evil laughter came from under Hilda's feet. She moved away quickly only to see that the sorcerer whom she just mercilessly massacred was laughing like a freak. Truthfully, Hilda was scared. What in the world? Alina sighed as she was already past that shock. She held the man from the head, grabbed her other sword, and decapitated his head from the neck, then stuck the sword into the body. Art, Red Witch, that's painful. The head screamed at her, causing Hilda to go even paler and Wolfer to remove his helmet in awe. How did you do that? Wolfer asked Alina. I didn't do it. These bastards are semi-eternals, and from the looks of this one, they're some sort of Daedra. A human body, but it was possessed by a Daedra. I understand now. As Alina took a closer look, she was able to determine the strangeness of this sorcerer. It is almost impossible for a human to host a Daedra by normal means other than curses like vampirism and lycanthropy. However, this was something even darker. So, who is the master you spoke of? A Daedra prince who has a grudge against my husband? Alina asked. Humph. I won't answer anything, Red Witch. You can't kill me. You can't harm me. Alina's face hardened. I just purged your friends. Weaklings. They are lowly weaklings, but don't worry. My master has more powerful servants like me. If I wasn't enough, then an army of my equals will scotch this land back to ruin. I'm so evil. Alina commented as she verified the truth with her eyes. We will have more questions for you, but let's purge the rest of your friends first, then preserve your head in a jar filled with blessed oil. Blessed oil. Blessed objects were the bane of dark creatures. Such an oil exists, and if a Daedra's head, for example, was trapped in one, it will be forever a torturous prison for the being. Alina gagged the head and gave it to Wolfer, then instantly vaporized the rest of the possessed bodies with her eyes. They finally have a prisoner they can extract information from. As they were about to move to Winterhold, a Storm Atronach horse interrupted them in the way, and its rider was no other than Isha. Alina, here you are? She jumped off the Atronach. Don't worry, I am fine, Alina assured her. Good, but there is news, bad ones. Isha replied. Fort Castav was overrun by the bandits that just attacked the south. The Stormcloak commander was killed, and the survivors reported treason in the ranks. You say what? Alina freaked out. That's not just it. Isha said, vampires. Vampires were sighted assisting the bandits. This situation turned even darker on this horribly eventful day. Assassins, Daedra, bandits, and now vampires. Whoever after this has brought war to Winterhold. Alina's eyes finally showed anger she can no longer hold. She turned to the head of the Daedra and grabbed it from Wolfer. Wolf, you go to Castav. Mother, tell Father Johnrad that there are vampires. Isha, find Jellinar and tell her to meet me at the college. Alina said, Why will you go to the college? Hilda asked. We need answers, and I think we all know just the person who can make the Daedras sing. Chapter 542, Battle for Winterhold 1, The True Enemy. Bring down those archers. Where are the reinforcements? This way. Send them to the healers. Fort Castav was surrounded from all corners by almost 1,000 raiders. The fort's garrison, which wasn't over 200 Stormcloak soldiers, suffered heavy casualties since the morning at the hands of those murderous attackers. Actually, these raiders were no ordinary band of road robbers. They were organized fighters. Some of them can even cast a spell or two. Their archers were good, as well as they scaled the nearby mountain and rained the fort's front yard with arrows. It didn't take the whole group of raiders too long to breach the first yard and push the defenders back to the upper yard and into the keep. More to that, there were monsters in the skin of men in their ranks. People who would turn into swarms of bats and corner the soldiers in the shadows, biting their necks and drawing their blood. Vampires, Shores curses you all. We can't die here to Ard. The soldier that spoke received an arrow to his neck and fell off the wall without a sound. There was no glory in this slaughter. If Fort Castav is lost, then the safe land trade route between Winterhold and Windhelm will fall to the control of bandits. But what is going on? Why aren't the troopers of Winterhold here? The Stormcloak commander had a lot in his mind rather than just securing the fort, but also the lives of his men were in grave danger. This was the time to abandon their post. Send the men to the keep. Seal it behind you while I buy you time. There is a hidden door in the cellar that takes you to the northeast of this mountain. You'll find yourself near Winterhold. The commander spoke to his second. Commander, come with us. I said go. Give me a new shield and go. By your orders, Commander, Father. The young lieutenant nodded as he handed his shield to his commander, his old man. Carrying the burden of retreat on his own, the lieutenant led what was left of the remaining 100 warriors in the keep and sealed it. Meanwhile, the commander of the fort remained standing with a sword and shield blocking the arrows and slaying the raiders. Under his feet, almost 40 corpses piled up. The man surely was exhausted from the fight. He killed even more down the yard, but this was his limit. He terrified the bandits just by standing over the keep's gate and defending it like an impenetrable dam. So it is the famous hero of Eastmarch, Thane Ironbeard. Over the ranks of the raiders, a towering man holding a fearsome battle-axe walked over towards the commander. Thane Ironbeard spat at the dead bandits and raised up his shield, not even bothering to exchange words with the scum. This towering man was minimally armored, but his aura was murderous, and despite the scratches over his body, most of the blood covering him wasn't his. You aren't talking, huh? I see you're no longer buying time then. The man spoke, then looked at the sky and took in a deep breath. You smell this? The commander was about to ignore and attack the large man, but a certain smile that appeared on the face of that man made him freeze and think for a second. What? No. Yes, very yes. The leader of the bandits replied, It is the smell of blood, all right. You sent your people to escape through the caves beneath the mountain. You just didn't think we know about them. Poor you. You don't even realize that we know about every little inch around this hold. The man walked to the commander and raised his battle-axe high, going down with a mighty swing. The commander woke up from his shock in a bloody rage. He parried with the shield and countered with the sword, forcing the bandit leader to defend with the shaft of his axe. The commander then bashed with his shield once, causing the bandit leader to lose balance, then charged with the shield once again and almost knocked down the bandit. Then, with a strike of his sword, he stabbed the man at his naked torso. It should have gone in, it should have torn through every muscle and organ, but the sword tip barely grazed the skin. The bandit leader held the commander's blade and kicked him with his full might. Now that distance was made again. The bandit leader no longer wanted to have fun after this disgrace in front of his men. You vampire bastard! The commander roared. Vampire? No! The bandit leader held his axe firmly and conjured a dark power from within. The white of his eyes was slowly getting affected as it turned all black, not vampirism. The second his eyes turned black, his axe struck the commander at an unforeseeable speed. The commander's shield was shattered, and his sword flew away as he defended. Disarmed, the old commander had nothing else but his fists and the shock of the unholy power that surged in his opponent. If you want to blame anyone, blame John Dare. And the axe landed on the shoulder of the commander, splitting him to the guts. Fort Castav has fallen. Tell me you know what is going on in the hold. The Jarl is running around like a headless chicken, and everyone is asking where John is. Alina spoke with a stressed face. We know a thing or two. Jelinar nodded patiently. Then out with it. We have gathered information after asking the Jarl's men to raid the homes of those spy we knew of. They didn't know much, but I bought information from the Thieves' Guild and pieced everything together. And those who attacked us are not bandits, but rather mercenaries. They come from Riften. Jelinar said. Mercenaries? I thought those bastards are all busy with the war. Alina frowned. Yes, we thought so as well. Weird enough, those people were hired by Ulfric Stormcloak, and that's how they took a free passage to Windhelm, then took some boats a week ago, and landed yesterday in Winterhold. You know the rest. And they attacked a Stormcloak fort, betraying their employee. They did. We also couldn't determine which mercenary group they belonged to, as it seemed they registered themselves as various small mercenary groups to look insignificant. With the late rise of mercenary numbers, they slipped easily under everyone's noses. TSK. We became sloppy. Alina said, grinding her teeth. Even you and John can't foresee things this far. Stop blaming yourself and think of a way out of this. Jelinek seemed saner ever as she said that. The two were standing under the night sky on the roof of the college to overlook the big city that is theirs. Winterhold, their dream. Alina rested her hands on the cold stone fence as she took a deep breath, thinking quietly. Slowly, Jelinek came closer and rested her head on Alina's shoulder, feeling each other's warmth as their bodies stuck closer. John has been out for a month, and here we are again. Maybe we should go to bed tonight and relax together a little bit. Jelinek suggested. Alina let go of her stress for a little while and turned to Jelinek, accepting her love attempt and kissing her lightly as the two of them smiled. It is a tempting idea, but let's leave that when we fix this mess. Now that her mind is clear, Alina kept organizing her thoughts slowly. A reckless idea came to her mind, but such ideas would save many lives. She slowly started considering it. Joel, give me a report of your investigation, she asked. I knew you'd want it. Jelinek handed a few pieces of parchment to Alina, who looked at them all in one go. Many information, messy situations, a lot of blank spaces where answers should be. Still, it was a start. First, the orb which Beth called the Eye. Second, the assassin's ambush outside Sarthal. Third, the attack of the bandits who have vampires in their ranks. The three events happen on the same day, and it can't be coincidental. Alina's supernatural intuition told her that much. Fate. John's last note delivered by Beth said that if she follows his instructions, she will alter her own fate to something greater and maybe the fate of Winterhold along with her. Welcome to Team Fate, he said. Still, Beth was waiting for her in the open without security, meaning that John knew there was a change in fate, but not necessarily how. If John knew that he endangered Beth without knowing, he wouldn't sit still and leave no stone unturned until he caught those bastards and decorated the city wall with their heads. Alina closed her eyes and focused on the wind that carries the magic of kind. Slowly, she drifted into a dream, and time became a variable that changes based on her whims. She saw herself in Jelinek's embrace, standing on the roof from the perspective of a third person. Then she saw many other paths leading to many directions. Just like John's ability to pause the space in his head and traverse through it, Alina can do such a thing with time. John is a seeker, but she is a seer. To her, forward is the future and backward is the past, but she can't determine exactly, as there is no single clear way, and they all twirl not only to infinite futuristic possibilities, but also infinite versions of pasts. Only by seeking guidance from the winds of kind could Alina become one of the best seers in this era. Crimson Moon, the Red Witch. And so, she traversed time. She needed to know more, and thus she tried to look as hard as she could. But she was no Elder Scroll, or else she might have uncovered all the truths by merely a whim. She needed more mediums, information, destination. Links upon links formed a large network of thoughts in her mind as she saw the bigger picture slowly. Her red eyes moved madly as if she was looking for the axis on which all this conspiracy revolves around. Who is the enemy? That was the question she asked, and finally, the answer came. A vision. Mystics like Alina are used to visions as their senses are not fully their own. Now this vision was vivid and very much alive. She was standing on the roof of the college all alone. Just her and no one else. Not even the winds of kind were moving as they should. The sky, it was blood. Each and every part of the horizon was just blood. She panicked but managed to remember that this is a vision, even though it felt too real. Alina looked down at the city to find it back, as if it was the same thing before John arrived and fixed it, the same ruins and the same poverty, but it looked way smaller. There was smoke coming from the sea, so she ran to the other side of the college and looked down to see the water of the Sea of Ghosts turned bloody, as well with many ships were broken and burning. Their sails were carrying the names of everyone she knew in Winterhold, but John's name was written the most. The vision didn't end here. Alina heard a lot of shouting coming from the west, and she looked over there to see, as if the world shrunk, and she can see Sarthel from the top of the college. There, she saw John standing on the top of the Tower of Music and fighting many beasts that flew in the sky. Dragons? There were too many of them for him alone to handle. He killed some of them, but he was barely keeping up on this rate. Around him were corpses of his family members, lovers, friends, even her. The situation was bleak, but suddenly, chains. They dropped down from the bloody sky and bound John firmly. He then started turning into an ugly monster. He tore apart the dragons as if they were nothing and ate them all, and then abandoned the corpses of his family and friends, walking away towards the bloody sea. The vision ended. Asterisk gasp. Star. Alina opened her eyes wide. She was shaking too bad, and her body became colder than what could be humanly tolerated. She used too much of her life force just to see that. Alina, what the fuck? Jelinek panicked. Alina dropped to her knees in a pale face and a bad shape. Reaching a vision this accurate did not only put a strain on her, but it almost threatened her life. She did something humanly impossible and tempted fate for an answer. A little bit more, and she may have damned herself to oblivion. What happened? You were fine, and... Jelinek tried to question her, but Alina signaled for her to stop. Joel, listen, this is important, too important. Go find Wolfer. Tell him to act quickly and secure everyone. They're after everyone. Alina said as she begged for breath. What do you mean? Jelinek asked. Alina's grim face turned even more dangerous. She pulled Jelinek closer and spoke in her ears the true identity of the enemy and their purpose, the plot she uncovered by putting too much on the line. The identity of the true enemy. Chapter 543, Battle for Winterhold 2. Wolfer strikes back. Yesterday was an exhausting day for Alina. Not only did she have to fight twice, but she even drained a large chunk of her own vitality as a prize for divining the truth behind what is happening in Winterhold. Alina's divination filled many gaps and answered many questions, so she shared those answers with only Jelinek and Wolfer, the only two who can be trusted at the moment. Even John must not know, especially John must never know. As Alina soundly slept in her bed while Ela was watching over her, Jelinek closed the door of the room and dismissed the rest of the people. Alina needed some quiet, or that was the excuse. The only one who stayed with Jelinek was Wolfer. She already shared with him what Alina told her, and his face was dark with worry. Such a thing, it can't be true. No, we must not allow it to be true, Wolfer said as he squeezed a tankard with his bare hand from the frustration. It won't be true, Jelinek confirmed him. He looked at her, and his eyes showed anger that was never seen on him before. He is never angry, but the thought of what Alina passed to him was eating him from the inside. Let's face it, we all know John and how he thinks. You of all people have been with him since childhood. What do you know? The John I know never crosses his lines. You were nothing but a mere killer when he found you, so don't ever think. Wolfer lashed at Jelinek with an annoyed face, but stopped the moment he knew that he crossed the line. Her face twisted in anger, but somehow, she managed to remain calm and held herself. You are right. I was nothing, but now I am something. And if you are so knowledgeable about John's lines, you tell me what they are. You are his brother, all right, but it is I who serve his darkness, and that's a depth you will never know, Wolfer. She said with a solemn look in her eyes. Now tell me, what are his lines? Jelinek retorted to him. Wolfer wanted to answer her, but his anger didn't get his thoughts straight, and he chose to remain silent. We are those lines. I know what Alina said got to you more than anyone, but the real enemy has realized our weakness. So, for the time being, we have fate to serve and people to murder. It was hard for Wolfer to accept the words of a lunatic like Jelinek this easily, but he knew she was right. As he gradually calmed down, he nodded and apologized for what he said. I am sorry. Don't be a softy. I wasn't even offended. She looked away from him as she was clearly offended, so he changed the subject. It is almost dawn. We have to move towards Castav. Naturally, the boss is away and the lady is unable to lead. Should we call the Jarl? He asked. Bah, You're the only one with a title like them. They call you the chief for crying out loud. Yeah, that makes me the third in command, right? He asked. She dubiously looked at him. Took you 5 years to figure that one out? She asked. I guess. Wolford didn't want to go head-butting with Jelliner again, and so he sat simply just waiting. What will you be doing when the group moves? He asked. I am staying, she said. You're the offense. I will stay here and watch over the city. Uncle Johnrad will accompany you, so you have more than what you need to drive those fuckers out of Castav. It wouldn't be a problem. He nodded, and, what? Nothing. I just wanted to ask if John has also given you some notes telling you to do stuff. He said, both of us as well as Alina. Alina operates here. I operate in Rift Inn with the thieves, and you in Whiterun with the companions. But he said there is a fourth fate. We are clearly 3. Well, don't ask me. As far as I am concerned, John didn't have that one fully planned out just yet. She shrugged her shoulders. Wolfer nodded with a hum as he rested his hand on his hammer shaft. And what hunt did he send you on? He asked. Me? Clearly not as much as you. She said as she gazed at the hammer he has. I got a new bow. Jelliner walked inside the armory and returned with a terrifying-looking bow that made Wolfer have a strange look with his face. That's Daedric, right? Ruin's Edge, it is called. She nodded. It's a bow, not a blade. Why call it an edge? 'Cause it's edgy. Joel made a wild guess, then pointed at the side of the bow. Look, there's even an eye. A living eye on the bow that makes its arrow chase the target no matter where it runs. You edgy indeed. Wolfer felt bad for whoever used to own that actual living moving eye on the bow, who made this monstrosity. It was made in the Shivering Isles by the Maskin, Dark Seducers. John told me it was with a crazy bandit leader in Eastmarch. I traveled there, killed the bandits, faced their leader in a legendary battle where I was actually racing arrows and killed the guy in a cheese-eating contest. I want to try to figure out how it escalated that way. Wolfer said. Rune's Edge, Daedric Ebony Bow. Random effect. Homing arrows. What about you? She asked. Me? John sent me to Rift Inn to meet up with some orc clan that was being attacked by giants. He said. Interesting. Turns out the leader of the orcs was a craven and Malakath cursed him. So I acted as a champion for the clan and redeemed them to Malakath after killing the giant's leader and the orc leader as well. Malakath rewarded me with this hammer, the hammer that an entire nation was named after. He pointed to the warhammer he is leaning on. Hammerfell? So this is it? Volendrung? Yes, Volendrung. The great hammer of the Dwemer clan Rorken, which was claimed by Malakath after the disappearance of all Dwemer. Volendrung, Daedric Dwemer Warhammer. Absorb stamina. Paralysis. Disintegrate. It looks evil, Jelliner commented. Wolfer silently pointed back at her bow. Well, that wasn't the end, and actually the second part of the journey was illuminating. Do tell. I met an Argonian woman going mad over a Dwemer lexicon that she possessed, or rather, it possessed her. Either way, she wanted to get rid of it and hired me to do so. Thankfully, John advised me to contact our excavation team beforehand and make them ready for a large Dwemer ruin exploration. This ended with us in the ruins of the Dwemer city of Evanchizel. This place was out of the world. It took us a full week to follow it up, and the lexicon showed me ghosts of the ones that stole it from its place until I reached the deepest vault. There, I placed the lexicon on its pedestal and managed to delve into its memories. And Wolfer remained silent for a while before grinning. I inherited Dwemer knowledge, lots of it. Jelliner raised her brows. You're too tall to be a dwarf. You're right, but I still got it. So, where did the dwarves go? You at least know that, right? And not that kind of knowledge, Wolfer said apologetically. TSK. I thought it was something fun. What are you talking about? I gained knowledge of Dwemer contraptions, steam technology, machinery, and Dwemer metal processing. Even that scholar from Markarth that would jack everyone off of their Dwemer artifacts would kill for what I have. He retorted. I said it is not fun. You boys get too excited for weird stuff. Sigh, whatever. I at least rose up a couple of ranks at the Thieves' Guild, she said and looked at Wolfer. Yeah, I almost punched a companion for calling me whelp, he said with shame. She grinned at his situation. Wolfer is famous around the warriors of Skyrim, but he still had to start from the bottom with the companions. She, on the other hand, had a good relationship with the guild and managed to raise her rank. She uses the false name Sparrow in the guild, but the only ones who know her real identity are Delvin Mallory and Brynjolf. John didn't want her to catch the attention of the guild master, Mercer Fry. Wolfer and Jelliner chatted for a bit until someone knocked on the door and walked it. Trudvar, are we ready? Yes, Chief. 500 dare troopers on their horses are waiting outside Winterhold. We will be joined by 500 guardsmen at Whispering Town and a force of 1,000 Stormcloak soldiers coming from Eastmarch. The clans will also send their men. Good. Let's move out. Wolfer nodded and followed Trudvar before he stopped and turned to Jelliner. I am sorry about what I said once again. Don't worry about it. I will tell John definitely. Great. I trust he will say brothers before hoes. Fine. I'll tell your wife. From Winterhold to Fort Castav. That was a long journey as Wolfer and the Dare troopers were racing on their horses to get past Whispering Town before first light. The raiders or the mercenaries or whatever would surely expect retaliation, but what they are not expecting is Alina being onto their plans. Now that Wolfer knows the objective of those evildoers, he was going to play a powerful reverse card on them and wreak havoc in their ranks. They met with Jonrad Firemane in Whispering Town and were joined by a band of firemans and moonblades on flame horse Atronax. Wolfer was riding a large bear Atronac, which gave him the airs of a war chief. Soon, they were but a mile away from the fort when Wolfer noticed a few wolves circling a man lying in the snow. They seemed to have not preyed on him, yet so Wolfer signaled the army to continue without him and chase the wolves away. He didn't suspect to feel some life force from the lying man, but to think that he was actually alive. Over here, send a healer. Wolfer called, and the healer arrived to rescue the man. He happened to be a Stormcloak officer and the last of his attachment. He said the two words cave and vampires, and much else, then he passed out afterwards. But to think that the whole garrison was annihilated. The one who was assigned to Fort Castav was Thane Ironbeard from Eastmarch, a well-known warrior who was a veteran from the Great War. Wolfer returned to the lead and went with the army until they could see the pillars of smoke up above Castav. There, Wolfer decided to strategize and take all the available routes to the fort. Jonrad Firemane took the direction of the mountain to find the caves along with a band of experienced fighters, and Wolfer took the other 3 routes, over the mountain back, through the wooden palisade wall, and far across the fort wall from the other side to prevent the enemies from escaping. It was a good plan, but way too good to be done in less than a few minutes. Why? Less than 100 enemies were present in the fort, and they resisted and fought to their demise, but the evildoers summoned many undead from the fallen Stormcloaks. There were no vampires or anyone else in the caves either. On the other hand, Wolfer and some battle mages didn't participate in the assault. They spread widely all across the fort looking for barrels and crates that didn't look too suspicious. Once they found a mound of them in the upper yard of the fort, Wolfer used a grand freeze scroll on these containers and carefully started dismantling them. Fire salts mixtures, highly unstable, and would explode right away if they were moved violently. A mage from the trooper analyzed the components of the crates. Keep them frozen. Transport what you can away from the populace and bury them in the snow. This amount of fire salts will certainly be useful. Wolfer said, fire salts are some rare alchemy ingredients that can only be harvested by hunting fire Daedra. That amount of fire salts is by no means anything to laugh at. It also can be mixed with other alchemy ingredients to create a highly unstable mixture that can be used in making explosives, but the recipe itself is abnormally advanced and with a low success rate. From what Wolfer can tell, this amount of fire salt explosives were meant to target the whole force of Winterhold. If not for Alina's warning, avoiding such a thing would have required an abnormal amount of luck. But the question remains, where are the rest of the attackers? They surely should have stayed close to watch the explosion annihilate the men of Winterhold firsthand. With that in mind, the search started and Jonrad Firemane found traces on a nearby mountain. As he told Wolfer, a scout came from the nearby road, which led west, shouting that the bandits were attacking Nightgate village. "It's a trap," half the Firemane said. "Why are you saying it like it is a joyous occasion?" Wolfer asked. "It's a John impression. He always says it with a delighted face. Believe me, you don't want to know what comes to John's mind when he says it," Wolfer assured him. Mirren sneezes badly back in Winterhold. "It is still a trap, though." Vladimir Firemane cut their laughs. "I know. We still ought to welcome it head-on," Wolfer said. "They have to act, or the village will suffer the same fate as the fort." With that, a band of 300 dare chargers sped through the snowy road led by Wolfer towards Nightgate. The rest of the army followed, and Vladimir Firemane summoned a flame hawk Atronak and scouted the sky from up ahead. The situation near Nightgate was still escalating. Almost 400 raiders were starting to burn, pillage, and loot the village, but they met the superior force of the dare chargers. Wolfer, who led the attack against the raiders, was driving through them on his bear Atronak as Volendrum. In his hand was claiming lives and damning them to Malakath. The people of the village escaped behind the coming rescuers, and a skirmish occurred in the middle of the village. There where Wolfer met the first sighting of the vampires among the raiders. Wolfer didn't even face a problem against vampires. He is a user of the Holy Aura, and he is insanely armored. It was safe to say that his hammer battered through mortals and vampires alike, turning the men into mush and the monsters into dust. Still, there was another problem. They were preparing something for us, Wolfer said as he stood in the middle of the village's square. Around him, many soldiers were fuming with anger as they rounded up all the remaining raider captives and put whoever survived their leaders in chains. Before they arrived, the raiders seemed to have killed the dare troopers and the guards that were stationed in the village and crucified them for display in order to break the morale of the soldiers who supposedly survived the blast in Fort Castav. A rapid situation of interrogation and executions happened afterward. Those who don't give out information were beheaded on the spot, and from the surviving raiders, a handful few barely said anything under torture. It was strange, as most of them wouldn't even speak or say anything not out of loyalty, as there is no honor among thieves. They were rather driven by fear. Now what could make men like those raiders follow vampires to raids? There were vampire thralls, all right, but these men were silent, as if death is something they would simply welcome from the fear of what comes. When a dare trooper roared at the one he was holding if he was not afraid not to go to Samgard when he gets slaughtered like sheep, the captive merely laughed and said that what awaits in Samgard is nothing but pain and fear for the faithless. There when Wolfers understood what kind of people they were up against. Nords hardly lose faith in Samgard, no matter what, but the truth that Samgard is haunted at the moment is only known to a very close circle of people around John. The only outsiders that may know of this are the dragons and supposedly their followers. But saying that those raiders are dragon cult is too short-sighted. There are forces more at play rather than a dragon cult here, and they were driven by a mastermind. Someone who carefully picked every enemy that was ever wronged by John or Winterhold. Bandits, pirates, Daedra, vampires, worm cultists, dragon cultists, old enemies, clan remnants, criminals, spies, they all banded together rather harmonically under the banner of dread and fear. That's enough. Take no prisoners. Wolfer ordered the raiders all dead. The bodies of the raiders were piled and burnt at the end of the first day. By the second day, news reached that the raiders were attacking Fort Fellhammer occupied by Stormcloaks on the other edge of the hold. The garrison there should be stronger than Castav, as it is close to the frontier, Wolfer said. You are not reading the situation right. They want us to rush after them. John Rad corrected Wolfer. Right? But that means they want us to take the short route up on Wayward Pass, but in ambush? Wolfer asked. It is obvious, but it would give them a great advantage. We would be forced to take it either way, since we don't want them to attack us from the back or expose the Nightgate village to them again. So we walk into the ambush willingly. They expect us to be worn out, because of the trap they laid to us in Castav and the fight here. I say we ambush them at the Wayward Pass before they discover how fast we are moving. John Rad's suggestion took wide approval. The man himself is an expert when it comes to ambushes and acting in unexpected ways. An hour later, the army was organized to split into two groups, one to the west through the Pale under Stormcloak leadership, and the other to the north to confront the ambushers. Meanwhile, in Winterhold, Jellinar was sitting on the roof of the Sea Mist Manor playing on her flute alone. Alina was still resting, and Ela was patrolling the streets on her own. The city was as silent as a grave, and every business in town was temporarily shut. It all began when the horn was blown 3 times, indicating an emergency situation in the city, then the eerie sound of Jellinar's flute carried by the gentle air. There were visitors in Winterhold. Not the welcomed kind of visitors, but they appeared across the shadows, indicating their dominance when the fight is far from sunlight. Silently and rapidly, 8-legged creatures crawled in the shadows and watched those figures as they slowly headed towards the manor. The music of the flute went down and went up slowly, then extended widely with a sweet tone before turning into beats and rattles, as if Jellinar was speaking a language rather than playing an instrument. And the spiders leapt on the head of the thralls of those vampires. And Ela the werewolf moved. And every dare agent jumped out of their hiding spots. And so it begins. Chapter 544, Battle for Winterhold 3. Victorious. Guess who's back? Back again. At Water and Gemechua is back. Estir again. Guess who's back? 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 Nanana. Also, if any of you play for honor, my name is Don_Dokmasi, and I am quite the noob who plays on PC. The advantage of information in war is basically the most important of all. If you know where the enemy is coming from, you will ambush them. If you know where and how the enemy will ambush you, you will counter that ambush and turn the tables. Surprisingly, those two situations happened almost at the same time. Wayward Pass and Winterhold were currently under attack by that mysterious enemy. In Winterhold, it was almost the same assassins who attacked when he arrived for the first time. Of all the goals to aim at, they were fixed on reaching John's house and kidnap Alina. Why her? Alina could make a rough guess herself, but the ultimate goal is to get to John. This enemy is not some dragon cult seeking to attack the warlord who supports the Dragonborn or any of the matter. This was an act of revenge against John himself. The blood in Alina's dream meant either war or blood oath, and not surprisingly, it was both. The enemy operatives were many and skilled enough to enter the city undetected. Still, once inside the city, a bloodbath awaited them, and it was made of cold steel and venomous fangs. Around the manor, there were enough dare agents from Team Zero to give a Daedric prince a hard time going past them. Around the city in the dark alleyways, many spiders heeded the call of Jellinar's flute and crawled from the sewers and the hidden areas. An arrow flew towards her throat with a terrifying precision, but a sudden flash appeared around her and sent the arrow away. The assassin who shot the arrow suddenly stopped moving as something caught him by the face and a stinger struck his skull. The Daedra inhabiting the man wailed and faded back to oblivion as the stinger reached the center of the brain, and suddenly the man turned to his companions with a large spider on his face. Even if they were inhabited by Daedra, what they saw was a thing from the nightmares. They wanted to deal with it silently, but as soon as they tried to cut the spider with their companion's head, he jumped on their swords in a freakish way and traded the arm of his companion with his life. The mind-controlling spider jumped off the man's body and attempted to take one of his companions, but the target struggled badly and stabbed himself with the spider on his face. One remained on this team, and he was already too terrified to go forward, but the Daedra inside him hated the feeling of mortal weakness and fear, so he didn't give the man the chance to retreat and plainly forced him to jump off the high point, running madly towards the Sea Mist Manor for an arrow to silently strike his eye. Almost all the agents of Team Zero shook their heads, seeing how messy their enemies are. They may have been possessed by something powerful, but a power gained without effort is a danger to its user rather than the opponent. They prided themselves to be the best at what they do. Still, those enemies are a far cry compared to the ones that faced Alina and Sarthal. They can't even resurrect themselves when they die. They heard during the mission briefing that this may be related to the Daedra inhabiting the host, but this scene was just pathetic. The scene repeated itself with many different spiders afterward. Spiders that can explode in poison clouds, spiders that can freeze their surroundings, large spiders that can bite armor, spiders that smell so bad as if the rotten flesh and touching them burns the skin. From the looks of it, Jellinar has taken her liberty with the experiments on her spider pets. Trash. All trash. But of course, not all the enemies were those cannon fodder. The plan of the attackers was to lure out the security detail around John's house and then seriously attack them, but this thing about running into spiders was simply too infuriating. Weak and feeble beings were able to wipe out almost 100 Daedra thralls, the amount that is by no means easy to just make. He finally gave a signal, and the real force behind him moved openly. It wasn't only stealthy assassins this time, but also creatures of the night, as well as undead and summoned Daedra. It must have taken them quite a long time and a lot of resources to sneak each and every one of those people inside the hold without anyone noticing, but that isn't what was important. The fact that these people were attacking during daybreak meant they were having some sort of plan. Was it to expose the whole ability of Winterhold's best defenders, or draw them all out, or were they being arrogant? Jellinar didn't think of it much now as the enemy was moving, but she could feel the murderous intent they harbored. The enemies charged towards the sea mist manor from the south, east and north like hungry beasts. Jellinar finally decided to jump off the roof and meet the enemies head-on, but as she landed on her feet, she quickly turned tail and ran away from the scene. Soldiers do not abandon their posts this easily, and there was no way that Jellinar, the one who was a literal pain to the cult's operatives, to retreat like that unless. From the sides of the scene, multiple canisters rolled on the ground, catching the attention of the attackers, and by the next second, flash, flash, boom. The grenades exploded one after the other, blinding those who can be blinded and causing a sun damage to the undead. The solar grenades were designed specifically to deal with vampires and undead, while a small number of grenades were silver frag grenades that would harm werewolves and vampires. This was merely the beginning, as all the houses around the Sea Mist Manor were literally packed with agents dressed as dare troopers. They all opened the windows and scaled the walls nearby, aiming their crossbows at the attackers. Fire! It was so foolish for the attackers to think that as long as they are inside Winterhold, no one other than the powerful figures would stand in their way. They simply had numbers and would use that to distract people like Jellinar or Hilda to try to get to Alina, but not only did the powerful figures not appear, the defenders of Winterhold were already onto their plan and readied the perfect counterattack. But did any of that matter? Hardly. The attackers came with the intention of sacrificing as many as they could as long as they can harm John's people and kidnap his wife. They intended to deliver the most devastating blow of humiliation to John, who was their most hated antagonist. What followed was just pure mayhem. The necromancers commanding the undead cast corpse explosion on their fallen comrades who were close to the defenders, attempting to injure as many as they could. Reinforcements that were hidden nearby joined the attackers and tried to scale the walls and enter the houses, but tink, tink, tink. Bear traps. They were everywhere, hidden by illusion magic, but not just that. Boom, boom, boom. They were exploding bear traps, as if the original function wasn't terrifying enough. Frost runes, solar grenades, exploding bear traps, shooting from windows. It was as if the defenders of Winterhold were not a legit army, but rather a band of thugs. In truth, the Dare Troopers were trained in both urban and open field situations, making them a deadly force that individually increase in power the more they join each other, and the Dare agents are elites among the troopers. Their astonishing coordination befitted the most powerful force in the north. The attackers still kept the strategy of numbers, and while many would think it wouldn't work, it was actually working. They managed to push the defenders by a block and adapted to the traps and their pattern. Hiya! Kill them all! Yet from the back, an unexpected defense strategy showed itself. The Dare Troopers, with a band of firemen and moonblades led by Hilda Firemane, assaulted the attackers from the back, even with their number and mobility disadvantage. Hilda was as towering as ever, holding an axe that is as tall as her, and swinging it around, dyeing the background in blood. Her frenzy kicked in the moment she saw enough blood and kept brutalizing the enemies on a pace of her own, while the rest followed her momentum. This woman is truly brutal, worthy of the name Bloody Hilda. Even with her late experience with motherhood and becoming more docile now that she's settled in Winterhold, old habits seem to die hard, seeing her turning the enemies into pieces of artistic gore. Raider excursions. Her destructive power alone wasn't enough, sadly. The enemies could easily escape from her or try to attack her from behind, but at this moment, another figure showed up in the Shallotter Plaza. Holding a spear and fighting like a machine, Isha came down from her house with a feral anger, killing and chasing every enemy she saw. Bothia! Isha shouted to the Daedra, and in the frozen heart of Skyrim, the hot winds of the Sahara were summoned, conjuring a sandstorm that blinds the enemies. The number of monster-class warriors in Winterhold was not something anyone would expect. Isha, Mirren, and Miranda are strangers and never showed up that often, so they were completely an unwelcome surprise. The Dare Troopers are known to be powerful in the field, but not as agile as cats, reminding the attackers of the black pigeons who snoop around them. Even the firemen and their beasts were present, and the younger generation members showed a shocking potential. The fight reached its climax with the two parties at each other's throats. The normal residents of Winterhold were evacuated to the other districts of the city where it is safe, and the Jarl even showed up in a squad of his guardsmen and blocked the roads. When the attackers wanted to use any house's residents as hostages, they would find out that a band of Dare Troopers or some firemen were waiting for them inside. How were these people this ready? The leader of the attackers never knew. The plan, which was put down to him by his leader, the one called Helmer, is now gone, and only death awaits his band if they stay further. They can still retreat, they very much can. Reluctant and bitter, he called for a retreat, but in his heart he believed that one day, those cocky people of Winterhold will no return to their place once they see true fear. They will shiver in dread when the heads of the firemen and the dares are hung on spikes and displayed on the walls and roofs. This day will be the day when the true owners of Winterhold return. He turned to the sky and roared for Winterhold to hear. Mark my words, Winterhold, your cities will be purged, your homes will be burnt, your men will be slaughtered, your children will be thrown in the sea, your women shall he our plaything. One day we will return and purge this filthy land under blood and sail. Clan Bloodsail will never die. He said his piece with all the hate in the world. He was satisfied once the fight stopped after hearing him. He grinned and took out a teleportation scroll to retreat away. But a beautiful woman appeared. And when a woman this beautiful appears, he realizes that whatever he ranted just now wasn't what made the fight stop, but was her who made the hearts of the men and women skip a beat. She is as beautiful as the word beautiful can get. She is tall, dignified, and carries the air of the noblest person anyone came across. A lady. No, the lady. Winterhold's queen, the Red Witch of the Crimson Moon, Alina Dare. Her head was crowned by an actual crown made of mithril, and she held on a staff. Both the crown and the staff were items of great power. The attackers knew what to do to this woman who simply walked out of her house's front door. Catch her, hold her, aim the teleportation scrolls towards her, and send her with them. She is the target they're after. John Dare's weakness. Alina looked at them with absolute abhorrence. Even with them being creatures of the night and Daedra worshippers, the look in her eyes caught them from inside and stripped them from any chance of redemption. There is no going back or any sort of salvation for their souls after they were stripped away of any form of divine mercy just by angering that woman. She is Kind's favored, Kind who carries the souls to the afterlife. Now Kind will no longer carry them. It is a fate they signed up for when they damned their own souls, but now their damnation has become eternal. They knew it all, but they could no longer hesitate. She has to be taken no matter what divine they anger or what curse they conjure. They stepped towards her, she sighed. You dare? She spoke. Dare? An infuriating word indeed. They wanted to curse that name that rendered their clan to ruin, but Alina's wrath came swifter. She is indeed weakened. She has spent a lot of her vitality to uncover their plans by looking into time. She put her life at risk so that she can corner them in a moment like this. Corner them? Yes. She alone was holding their lives in her very hands. She didn't use a staff or a circlet to cast magic. In fact, she didn't even use magic. She didn't unsheath her deadly blades. She was just standing in her home clothes covered by a fur cloak that added dignity to her appearance, and in her free hand, she held a control tablet, one of those light screens made by John. She tapped on the screen, and images appeared, then added a few taps and swiped across the screen before adding one final tap. No one knew what sort of madness she just did, but soon after, they learned of what kind of horror she called upon. She smirked in mockery. Now look what you made me do. Once the firemen's and dare troopers, basically, once everyone from Winterhold saw what just happened, they abandoned their posts and ran away without even looking back. Ominous? Not even close. Mechanical sounds were heard from all across the city as random pillars and structures started to transform as if it was a Dwemer ruin or a clockwork machine. The next thing seen was these structures opening up and strange-looking pillars appearing in their stead with orbs on them. Beezy. Alina simply turned around as every attacker around the city was now under the mercy of the Tesla Tower's defense system. That's right, John equipped the inner city with a secret tower defense system connected directly to his control panel. Like, if he can do it, why not? Wayward Pass was about to descend to the same havoc as Winterhold. Only difference is the defenders of Winterhold were the ones on the offense in this situation, and what a sight it was. First, a large man walked towards Wayward Pass, alone holding nothing but a katana blade. He stood in the middle of the roads, detecting all the presence around him and slowly unsheathing the blade. It was weird for the ambushers stationed on the path, as they expected an army to pass by. They were readying their arrows, traps, and large rolling rocks to completely decimate the dare troopers, but for only one man to show up, and not just any man. It was the King of Ashes himself. The ambushers consisted of many fallen clans that were destroyed by John Dare, the Firemans, and their allies. They knew who Jonrad Firemane is and knew very well the danger of facing a Dragon Knight. He is now standing in the middle of their trap at the highest point of Wayward Pass, next to the altar of Arche, and every arrow and blade were pointed at him. Still, it rather felt like they were the ones who were being ambushed. It was a whoever moves first dies first sort of situation. Jonrad was calm, very calm. He looked like an aged version of his son, with a larger beard and sleepier face, but the same domineer was there when the two are about to do something reckless. His killing intent was dense, and combined with his scorching flames, he slowly let out his aura with a mere hum instead of crying a ki. A manifestation, the highest form of aura. At first, Jonrad's aura was elemental, a flaming aura. It then showed its advanced form, affecting the earth beneath him into lava. Finally, ash spread from the molten earth under his feet and enveloped the area around him with what could be seen as clouds forming an image of a man whose eyes were flaming red holding countless blades. The King of Ash. The illusion manifesting around Jonrad was his battle spirit, his uniqueness as a warrior, and his character as a man. This manifesting illusion was the highest mastery an aura master can reach, and Jonrad has a place secured in the list of those who can manipulate their surroundings with their breath and aura. Attack! There was no longer a leeway from confronting this monster. A signal was given for the attack, and all the ambushers showed themselves in their traps, but suddenly, poof! Jonrad disappeared as if he wasn't there to begin with. Surrender or none of you will walk out of here alive. A shout came from up the mountain as the ambushers suddenly discovered that they were surrounded. It was hard to imagine how this happened, but Jonrad seemed to have never been on Wayward Pass to begin with. He was still down the mountain, but simply used a stealth technique to copy his aura into something that exactly resembles him and gave it some of his power to induce his aura in the surroundings. The former spy was not just good at hiding his presence, but also at creating living mirages and distractions to make the enemy fall into their own traps. While his aura mirage distracted the ambushers, Wolfer and Dare troopers scaled the mountain for high ground advantage, and reinforcements arrived from Sarthal. What happened next was more of a desperate defense rather than an ambush. At the back of the troopers, Jonrad had a light screen that he used to send a request for reinforcements, and it also carried instructions from Alina. It seemed that Winterhold City was secured, and all that was left were the ambushers here and at the ones attacking Fort Fellhammer. During the fight, Jonrad observed Wolfer, who fought a large man possessed by a Daedra, seemingly the leader of the whole attacker force. With the people here finally getting slaughtered and imprisoned by the troopers, Winterhold emerged victorious against the force that wanted to lay waste to its safety. Or so they thought. Of course, things can't just be sunshine and rainbows. The Bloodsails clan, the clan which plagued Winterhold for years with their Blood Horkers pirates, seemed to have survived the pirate purge at the hands of John Dare 3 years ago. Not only that, but they also combined their forces with the enemies of Winterhold and the Firemans. They were working for the Dragon Cult, and they were hell-bent on revenge. When they were all defeated, when their forces in Winterhold and Wayward Pass were destroyed, they didn't give up and called for their endgame card. From a lonely mountain, one man stood on its peak and cried to the sky. His shout was heard not as like Thursday but it had an echo to it, and it caused those who heard it to shiver in fear. What replied to such a grim cry was a roar, a thundering roar that almost split the heavens. The skies were covered by 2 massive wings as a terrifying creature circled around Sarthal. A dragon. Chapter 545, The Dragon in the Tower, big flipping thanks to our new patrons. At a Kindly Matin, at Patrick Wishart. Also, guys, just so you know, I've spent 2 days headbutting with the people from our /Tesla on Reddit, and I learned some fantastic stuff. Like 2 days of Reddit argument. Imagine it. Feel it in your bones. You're a wizard, har? No, wrong story. You are a Dragonborn. Now we're rolling. So to be straight, no homo. This chapter ends with some juicy lore that I squeezed for the past couple of days from all the official lore sources, USB, TLTS lore, and I need help. A dragon in the sky. Nearly everyone in the hold heard the mighty roar of the Dova that shook their hearts and souls. Scanning the sky left and right, the people finally saw the grim beast. Far above, there was a dragon effortlessly gliding between the clouds while witnessing all that happened in Winterhold. A feeling of anger drove him to roar as all the Daedric minions, vampire, and werewolves he created over the span of the past couple of months got completely obliterated in their first time on the offense. Nakanax, ferocious cruelty, was one of the most hated dragons from the First Era. His and his priests' attitude towards their followers made the most tragic of tales back in the day when dragons ruled the men. Even the Iliad could learn a thing or two from Nakanax and his methods. Officially, Nakanax was a follower of Anakindrag, the strategist of the Dragon Cult, and his mission was to train as many worshippers as he could to terrorize the resistance during the Dragon War by using his Daedric minion enslavement magic, which he was best at. He was also one of the dragons that could gather information effectively as long as he stays hidden in the clouds. But he was humiliated, utterly disgraced by the shameful display he just witnessed around Winterhold. Everything his followers planned was seen through and countered against in the most infuriating way possible. The faction of Winterhold was not only capable, but deep and mysterious. One moment the followers attack, the next moment some freaks of nature appear and dismantle all the plans. It felt as if Winterhold was prepared. Not just a day or two of preparation. It is the work of a long time of calculating and covering every angle correctly. Vampires were put down by anti-vampires' weapons. Werewolves were stunned by explosives. Daedric minions were purged by strange powers. Who in the world saw through all that and planned for it? The short temper of Nakanax was finally getting the best of him as he roared and nosedived downward towards Winterhold, exactly towards Sarthal. One can imagine how frightened the people were after seeing the beast come from the sky like that. Sarthal, Winterhold's crown jewel, was facing a danger it didn't witness before. The citizens who took a peek outside their homes screamed, as they never knew how will this end. Thane John is on a trip, the hold is in chaos, the war is raging outside, and now, a dragon. Prayers were all that most people could do, but these damn prayers were what a dragon like Nakanax enjoyed hearing the most. He would stand in pride and glee as the mortal worms pray to their divines for help before he devours them all. What happens next is his favorite game. He descends on a settlement, ruins the most obvious sign of human supremacy in that place, then starts breathing fire and chasing the humans to their demise. He could see it all happen now that the settlement is in the reach of his shout. He can see his fires devouring these buildings. He can hear the mortal worms scream and wail. He can taste their tender meat in his mouth. He just needed to topple down that tower which stood in the middle of the town, opposing the heavens. Just how infuriating was the tower, which was built by those mortal worms, to a dragon. It is as if the mortals forgot their place and started fancying themselves to be something. Nakanax aimed himself after the nosedive to fly straight to the dare tower that stood in the middle of Sarthal and ram it to the ground. The highest section of the tower alone can fall and completely bury a portion of the town under rubble. Cower in fear, mortals! Wywell Torshul. The mighty beast breathed his searing flames and rammed the tower, and with all his huge body, the world shook from the clash. And everything went dark. It was strange, weird, and really confusing. No one saw this dark except the dragon Nakanax. However, if anyone witnessed him, they would be sharing in utter confusion. He indeed was flying just now and crashed into the dare tower with the intent to bring it down on the heads of these mortal worms. But why is this tower still standing? Also, why is a dragon such as himself sliding slowly off the smooth wall of the tower? He could hardly regain his senses just before he crashed on the ground at the base of the tower. The mortals have long since run away, and no one was looking. Absolutely not a soul was staying around. Nakanax opened his eyes, seeing the world from a new perspective as he was lying on his back, just thinking. How did this go wrong? He thought. He looked at the tower, which was clearly large, but how could a building be this sturdy? Nakanax may never know, but he felt genuine shock and fear from the unknown. If there is something a dragon can't destroy, then there is something that can destroy a dragon. For the first time in a long while, a dragon, a being that can carve through mountains and dry out rivers, realized his own fragility. In an image of disgrace, Nakanax pushed himself against the ground and fixed his body posture, then quickly spread his wings and took the sky without even looking back. Saving himself some face, he didn't turn around and kept flying away before anyone took notice of what happened. Then again, what is wrong with that tower? Aha! Brother John, you were a sly one. Ha! It was just an idea. Brother Canute, I wouldn't really do such a reckless thing. Indeed. Time magic is dangerous. The whole concept of freezing an object in time to make it indestructible using an Elder Scroll is, well, it is genius, but not the right kind of genius. Ah, I see. As I said, please don't do it. I said I won't. You won't doesn't mean you haven't done it already, right? I said I won't do it. Chill, man. John said as he hid his face with his cup gulping down all its content. John dear, we have been roommates for 2 weeks now. I know you are up to something when you just mindlessly try to pass it quietly as a question. Damn, son, you're getting good at this. For kind's sake, Canute couldn't help but massage his temples and look at John with a tired face. Just tell me. Seeing Canute cornering him, John dropped his shoulders as well and spoke. So I built this big, beautiful building in the middle of my town, and it is a really tremendous building. You're going to love it if you see it. You can come and visit. Oh, sorry. You are a monk. You don't go down? Almost forgot. Anyway, the building is built on a good Magicka focus point, which I personally installed. It has this inner circuits of Dwemer wires, which are excellent magic conductors. These circuits work like the enchantment script inside an artifact and channel all the Magicka generated to the heart of the enchantment, which needs an Elder Scroll to function. Are you out of your mind? Didn't we agree on it second day I was here? Kind's mercy. What can such an abomination do? It's not an abomination. It is a tower of music. It literally can interfere with the fabric of reality. Imagine this. The tower can freeze itself in time, which cancels any input that tries to alter. It doesn't age. It can't be destroyed by literally anything. The interior is exempted from the temporal effect, but I can still apply it. It can even produce and cancel tonal signals, like making a pretty awesome orchestra that buffs everyone, or canceling the music of the world temporarily, making it impossible to use magic. But these are just the basic functions, you know? Still, I may have created the most indestructible fortress in the world that looks like a legendary lighthouse from my past life. Divines! I know, right? Even they can't touch me there. The only problem is I need to figure out how to make that tower teleport. Truth be told, I never imagined High Hrothgar Temple to be a place of such infinite knowledge and wisdom. To think that you guys know about the lost magic and all that jazz. If I have known, I would have ignored those damn labors and hid here instead. John, don't. Brother Canute, wait. John watched as Canute stepped out of the muffled zone he created for them to speak. Causing noise in High Hrothgar is prohibited, so the adepts would muffle an area and converse in it to not cause any disturbance for the masters. John and Canute were very talkative and had great talents in magic each. Being one of the likely candidates to achieve mastery of the way of the voice in the next 20 years, Canute knew a great deal about the tonal magic and other ancient forms of the arcane arts. Turns out the Greybeards were experts on more than just the Thursday, as it seemed that they were keeping and recording insights of their own ways of handling magicka, and had extensive studies in the arcane arts. Like, what would a monastery full of monks, sitting on the highest point in a world full magic, do anyway? Even though these studies were all deep and profound, they only served the purpose of worship and meditation to further understand the truth about the world and the divines. For non-Dragonborn mortals, understanding a single word of power meant delving into the deepest delves that surround that word and fully realizing all its concepts. If a voice master can shout fire, then they have spent years studying the laws of flame, and the best way to do that is to study flame magic. So on and so forth. The reason why John and Canute hit it off regarding studying together was because of how the two met eye to eye in many theories, and John shared a great deal of knowledge with Canute, making the latter put him in high regards during the past few days, but Canute soon came to learn the dire truth about John's aptitude for disaster, like making a super weapon in the shape of a tower in the middle of a town, or making ships that sail without sails. Leaving John for a few years on this momentum may end up with him digging up another heart of Lorcan or reconstructing a new Numidium. Following John's chaotic neutral behavior, he may cause a lot of trouble more than what he already did. Canute wanted to persuade the Dragonborn to keep to his mission to save the world and let go of his dangerous ideas, but John was too liberal about his pursuit of power. That's why Canute gave John a few books about the dragons in order to keep him from looking around the dangerous stuff. By accident, John took a major interest in these books, which originated from elsewhere: Argonia, Valenwood, and Somerset. They spoke about the dragons and their true relationship to Akatosh. This piece of lore is new, and it came with ESO Elsewhere expansion. It explains a lot about the nature of AKA. It is purely from a Khajiit perspective, but I'll explain it the best I can. I will leave my understanding between brackets. It all starts with Akka, who is the first cat, son of Onur and Fidomi, Anu and Padme, when they were still in love. Akka is naturally AKA, who also happens to be Oriel, the Elven Edra, as they all come first. From this point, the story jumps to the part where Oriel, Akka, wanted Anu to return him and the other spirits to Aetherius after they fell to mortality. According to the Khajiit myth, Honor Anu tells Akka to roam the land and find love, divinity, much like Onur and Fidomi once did. From that point, Akka went across existence and explored the many paths, the 6 walking ways, methods of immortality. During that, he went around and made love, with the mother mammoth of the north, the Dune Queen of the west, and the winged serpent of the east, mostly figures that existed on Atmara, Yukota, and Akavir. before he finally went to the south, probably where Immerse existed. From this mating, his offspring were many spirits. Not dragons yet. After Akka went to the south, the story shifts to the events of Auriel's transcendence when he ascended to heaven in full observance of his followers, so that they might learn the steps needed to escape the mortal plane. Auriel seemed to have shown his followers one way to ascend and kept the rest a secret, especially the Sigic endeavor. There when Akatosh appeared for the first time after Auriel's ascendance. He came as Alkosh and spoke warnings of the things Akka had made along the many paths Alkosh and his faithful were to watch over the many children of Akka, for they are both terrible and kind. It seemed that the disappearance of Immerse was consequential to Auriel's ascendance, thus the continent of the elves was forever lost, but it is just one possibility. The text also revealed a rather interesting detail that according to the elves, Auriel, aka, agreed to Lorcan's plan to create the mortal plane only when he was promised to become the king of the New World. Of course, Auriel and the other members of the Elven Pantheon felt betrayed with mortality, but this explains that Auriel's desire to rule was probably something the dragons inherited from him. There was also an interesting event that happened between Akka's offspring and Alkosh which led them to rebel and tear him apart. Dragonbreak. Kinnereth or Kine intervened and gathered Alkosh back together throughout the many paths. The event was translated in a different way in the Argonian myth that Akatosh had a shadow, Lorcan, which was what led to the creation of the world, and as the world expanded, some spirits, offspring of Akka, came to Akatosh, in hunger, so they tore him apart and ate him. After doing so, they started growing fangs and wings, eventually becoming dragons. With the intervention of Kinnereth, Akatosh was put back once again, and the time break that may have been caused because of the dragons ended. Kinnereth also learned many things along the many paths about what AKA did, and what he probably didn't want to be revealed. Despite the dragons are the sons of Akatosh may have post-dated most of them, but they only came to be dragons after eating him. One thing to note about these events was that they didn't happen in an orderly fashion. They were events from both the Dawn and Merethic era when the time was non-linear, so it is impossible to tell if all this happened before the conviction of Lorcan or not. John closed the few books as he copied them via the system and started writing on a new notebook, titling it as The Timely Lie, Volume 2 by John Dare, a multicultural study on the era of Dawn and Dragon and Man. Why not write a book during a dragon crisis? Seemed like a perfect idea for John at that time. But that was not the time for writing books. Somehow, he could hear a lot of noise coming from Winterhold, and the Greybeards were about to give him a task. Lydia, back up our things. Damn, I'm starting to sound like my uncle. Chapter 546, You Are Not My Enemy. Big thanks to our new patron at Bob Sourdrill. It was indeed noisy in the direction of Winterhold. The Greybeard seemed troubled by it, as well as the world doesn't seem to be able to get quiet for 2 nights straight these days. So, you have satisfied your curiosity, Dragonborns? Arngeir asked. Satisfied? Barely. Each answer I get opens the way up for hundreds of questions. John replied as he returned the books to Canute, who was standing at the side. Patience, Dragonborn. Too much knowledge can be as harmful as too much ignorance. Too much curiosity can lead your path astray as it did the ones before you. Arngeir said. Indeed. Canute agreed strongly, while trying to advise John. I agree. John reluctantly agreed. Curiosity killed the dog after all. Wasn't it to say? Canute spoke something blasphemous, but soon he noticed John looking at him with wide eyes. It wouldn't dare. Canute smiled wryly as he was no longer bothered by John's attitude. As an adept of High Hrothgar and a disciple of the Greybeards, he shouldn't mind John's unending bizarreness and keep to himself. He may have taken a liking to John as a person but questioned his ethics as a chosen one. Still, a Dragonborn is a person who alters the course of history, and he is but a hermit monk. I wish you well in the trials to come, Dragonborn John. Thank you, Brother Canute. They greeted one another as they know they may not meet for some time after today. So, you have learned all that we can teach, Dragonborn. Are you ready for your last trial? Arngeir asked John. I am. Retrieve the horn of Jurgen Windcaller, our founder, from his tomb in the ancient fane of Ustengrav north of Jalmarch. John thought for a second and retrieved an item from his ring that widened the eyes of old Master Arngeir. Is that horn of Jurgen Windcaller similar to this horn? John asked. The horn carried on John's two hands was gigantic, almost as tall as him. It made the calm and collected Canute drop his jaw wide open and for Master Arngeir to hold his breath. Such power. This is no ordinary one. Arngeir checked the horn up close and nodded in certainty. A horn of a dragon. No ordinary dragon at that, and no ordinary horn either. It is an immortal horn indeed, just like the horn of Jurgen Windcaller. Where did you get that horn from, Dragonborn? Arngeir's question was a bit troublesome, but knowing that this place is protected by kind, John could slip away one secret. I took it from the vault of the Worm Cult when I battled them in Hammerfell a year ago. This dragon horn is the fabled Horn of Jadari. John admitted. Arngeir nodded as he could tell that John wasn't lying. The sacred national treasure of the cat folk of the South. I am no expert in politics, but a treasure like that can start a war with elsewhere. True, but the Khajiit are with the Dominion either way. If there is anyone who will try to claim this, it would be the abominable Thalmor. I can't let such a thing fall into their hands. Also, Main Topaz is a personal friend, and I can convince him to lend the horn. John said, If that's the case, then I have no more to say. But Master Arngeir, what did you mean when you said an immortal dragon horn? John asked. Do you know the abilities of a dragon horn, Dragonborn? Arngeir asked. I am aware. A dragon horn is an artifact enchanted with ancient tonal magic that when blown, it creates a strong sound wave that can blast away dragons, but they shatter after a couple of uses. John said, Indeed, there is a difference between a normal dragon horn and an immortal one. The normal ones break. The technique to make them is lost on Tamriel, but it originated from the savages of Akavir and their martial magic, which was also made by tonal techniques. On the other hand, an immortal dragon horn is a horn given willingly by a dragon to a mortal and enchanted by the dragons themselves. Jadari and Jurgen Windcaller were the only known mortals to receive such honor. John nodded as he contemplated how Master Arngeir praised the dragon and showed a hint of disdain towards the Akaviri people. Bad blood existed between the Nords, the dragons, and the Akaviri people, but almost no story survived in today's history books about such matters, until the devs decide otherwise. So, Master Arngeir, will this horn be sufficient to finish the last trials? John asked with a sly face. Hardly. The horn of Jadari is indeed something great, but the horn of Jurgen Windcaller is symbolic to High Hrothgar. That is what you must retrieve. All right, John said as he stored away the horn he has. He wasn't sure whether to drop by Riverwood first to get the horn from the supposed thief who stole it, or to just go to Winterhold and ask if they caught the thief or not. He then decided to go to Winterhold and check out what is causing the noise over there. Then, I guess it is farewell until I get the horn. Master Arngeir, Brother Canute. Remember Dragonborn. Remain true to the way of the voice. John descended the mountain, put away the plain temple robes he used to wear, and donned his armor and weapons. By now, Alina, Jelinar, and Wulfur should have established a foothold in 3 of the 4 factions in Skyrim. What remained was the Dark Brotherhood, and he wasn't going to let anyone dear to him deal with Sithiz-related matters directly. The Dark Brotherhood is a cult of Sithiz which Nurina is a priestess in. Still, the cult of Sithiz is the most mysterious because every member of it has her own way of handling the way they worship Sithiz. For example, Nurina worships Sithiz for art and creation. She may not look like the type, but Nurina thinks that turning a blank page into a piece of art is the greatest change there is. Others like to change life to death, or even undeath. Others seek to create new absurdities like what happened with Isha's brother Zane. In the end, only he would deal with the Dark Brotherhood as he knows exactly that he is the most suitable for such an important questline. But How to mess it all up was John's idea. Too many variables depend on his actions, such as Vittoria's life, which he values dearly. He needed to return to Winterhold and put a plan, but as soon as he reached Eastmarch on his flying Atronach, John felt the change in the air above him. Asterisk roar. Star. A dragon. He could see a dragon flying higher and faster than the Atronach he is on. No matter what, dragons rule the sky, and if they want, no one can reach them. But that dragon didn't even mind John or anyone along the way and flew to the south. His direction didn't matter, but the direction he came from was Winterhold, which mattered. Winterhold is protected. The defense systems can hold a dragon for a good amount of time until the people of Winterhold and Sarthel reach a safe shelter. In Sarthel, there is the Dare Tower, and in Winterhold, there is a large vault under the mountain. There is also a mine and a few caves that are prepared for such situations. Either way, John decided to cut the few hours' journey into 1 hour by taking a shortcut. And he reached Winterhold after exhausting half of his magicka to teleport above the Shrine of Azura. He could see all the hold from above the great statue. The cities are safe, but the hold seemed on extreme alert, and pillars of smoke were riding from Castav Fortress. Also, the Stormcloak army was blocking the road to the south. What happened? Alina, can you hear me? John used his telepathy to try and call Alina, but she didn't respond. His heart sank, and his murderous reaction distorted his aura that broke free without his will. John was about to shout to the sky in anger, but before anything could happen, a hand grabbed him by the ear and tossed him from above the towering shrine all the way to the land level. The figure which appeared in his place sighed in tiredness and disappeared from that place, appearing right beside where John was about to fall to. John, who was currently free-falling, managed to collect his thoughts and cast Levitate. Right before he landed on his face, his body broke into cold sweat now that he found the ground an inch away from him. His irrational anger disappeared, but his self-pride was almost shattered. Who in their right mind would grab him by the ear and toss him like that in Winterhold? This must be Nurina. We need to talk. Before he gets to say anything, John was dragged by Nurina to the college without anyone seeing or knowing. Nurina's quarters were as messy as ever, but today there was a new addition to the mess. A head mount on a metal rod that looked very lively for some reason. Is that some sort of a Daedra? John asked as he poked the head with his finger, causing it to react violently. Just a fool who attacked your wife, Nurina said as she walked past a mountain of books. John's face stiffened, and a murderous glare was seen on his face as he turned to the head. What on earth are you talking about? He asked, barely keeping it in. John, dare. Seeing the dangerous look on his face, the demonic head showed a disgusting smile. John's hand instantly held the laughing demonic head up, and as it continued laughing, he smiled back and let something dark within him out. The chaos infection was directed through the mystical tattoos on John's arms directly to the head. Speak of Alina's red glare all you want, but the chaos infection holds all the unholy secrets that would make the devil wail. And it wailed. Enough! If not for Nurina shouting at John, he would have completely purged the head in an instant, but he rather violently returned it back on the metal rod, causing it more pain. What happened to Alina? John asked. Nothing, Nurina replied as she walked close to him. She just exerted more effort into a prophecy. She doesn't need to put effort to see prophecies, John retorted. It is a troublesome one, Nurina said as she slapped John on his arm. Don't you ever lose your sense like that in front of anyone. We were being watched all along. John's brows furrowed as he didn't understand what Nurina was implying. Watched? He asked. Did you happen to come across a dragon that was flying south? I did. What happened? Nurina sighed and walked to a seat. She then started telling John what happened in Winterhold from yesterday, till now, starting from the few battles that occurred, what happened to the Stormcloak garrison in Fort Castav, the strange entities known as Daedric minions, and the sightings of all the evil creatures around Winterhold. The culprit was obvious this time. The dragon cult and their dragon masters. John was not certain if such a thing may happen, but his existence as a powerhouse in Winterhold forced the dragons to seek a faction of their own now that the war was going slower than what they anticipated. John used politics and commercial leverages to pressure the war into a lazy state, which was not what the dragons wanted. Now that they lead an army of their own, they directly started undoing John's peace project and attacked Winterhold as the faction that supports the Dragonborn. He may have avoided attention as the Dragonborn, but he couldn't avoid it as someone who is against the war. The dragons are now troubled by his efforts to keep the Nords from killing each other, which means less souls to devour for Alduin. It means our efforts are working, John said. True. Nurina nodded, but the dragons were watching us all the time. That dragon you saw retreating was the one orchestrating the attack around the hold from the sky by commanding the ground forces through his dominance over them. It seems that the dragons know of ancient lost techniques which would enslave mortals by planting Daedra into them and making them more powerful. John kept silent as he watched the head which was still withering from the chaos he used on it. So you're telling me that this thing I just assaulted was some innocent? John asked. What? No. That bastard and others like him allied themselves with the dragons to exact personal revenge on you. They are Bloodsails. Bloodsails? John jumped on his feet. What are the Bloodsails, if not Winterhold's most hated enemies? The clan of thieves which led the Bloodhorker pirates to enslave Winterhold for many long years. John personally rooted them out and sent them to oblivion. He killed every Bloodsail male and spared the women and children as they escaped by boats in the sea. He didn't really mind them as the children won't pose a threat, not even in 10 years. I was sure I annihilated them, John said. Some survived somehow. This Daedric minion won't tell me, but he answered more valuable questions. I would love to know what you know, John said as he leaned forward with an impatient look in his eyes. All right. Nurina spoke of the dragon cult, which serves Alduin. They are quite the number, but not all of them were revived, but it seemed that Alduin and some other dragons were still operating before the attack on Helgen. That aside, the dragon horde of Alduin and the dragon cult has 4 factions. The first is the War Dragons, which was led by a dragon known as Kungasvern, a golden dragon and the champion of Alduin. The second is the Wise Dragons led by Onikindrag, the strategist of Alduin. The third is the Secret Dragons led by an unknown dragon, and their role is also mysterious, but totally very dangerous. The fourth is the Guardian Dragons, whose leader turned on Alduin back in the First Era, and the current leader position is vacant. That last dragon is clearly Parthernax. Aside from knowing about the dragon horde structure, each faction had a cult serving it, and they have various goals. The War Dragons cult was to wage war. The Wise Dragons cult was to sabotage the enemies. The Secret Dragons cult was to act in the shadows. The Guardian Dragons cult was to acquire riches and rule the subjects. They were not some mindless beasts. The dragons are even more organized than John thought they would be. They basically ruled an empire in the past, so they should be veterans in this game. But Winterhold is a whole new animal compared to what they know. It is a place of absolute efficiency and a paradise of opportunities. The scary human machine in Winterhold is not moved by fear like the dragon cult, but rather by motivation. Fear is a dangerous way to rule, but motivation is a cold-hearted machine. If it is Winterhold against the dragon cult, then let it be. John is not afraid, and neither is Winterhold. The Second Dragon War, that's how it started. Skyrim Civil War was the West versus the East, but the Second Dragon War is the North versus the South. From that demonic head, Nurina extracted the holds in which the dragon cult existed and operated. The Reach, Falkreath, and the Rift. It seems that the dragons have gained substantial resources and found many places to hide in the Gerald Mountains. This never existed in the game, and John found himself venturing into a completely new territory much to his liking. He knew what needed to be done, and Winterhold was just ready for the real challenge. So the dragons fly high in the sky and do recon? I'll shut that down then, John said as he already had a counterplan. I should go see Alina now. John went up, but Nurina held him and told him she has something to say. Actually, the reason why he is here all along. John didn't expect anything big, but she just dropped a bomb on his head. His true enemy, she said. The vision which Alina put her life on the line to see. How that's nonsense. John is not disrespectful towards Nerina, but he almost shouted at her in anger. John, calm down. Calm down? This is madness. My true enemy? That idiot wife of mine. I can't believe it. John never questioned Alina in the past, as she was always the wise one, the one who knows things. But this time John was questioning everyone else's sanity, and that's John Dare doing that. He charged out of Nerina's room and walked out of the college to his house. Everyone was there, but he ignored them all and went to the master bedroom where Alina was resting. You are not my enemies, you goddamn fools. None of you are. Chapter 547, Dance Like Fire. Once again, I apologize for being late in the recent period. I don't want to bitch about 2020, but there was some death cases due to coronavirus in my neighborhood and people I knew really well. It is depressing to write this after such a chapter one had fun writing, but I want to take this chance to pray for the world together and for all those we lost. Amen. John walked into his house, entered the room where Alina was resting, and an argument broke out. As a couple, they rarely argue, but in this one John was the winning side for the first time, while Alina kept looking down with a sad look on her face. John even called her an idiot multiple times, and she didn't really say anything back. Alina is protective when it comes to John, but this last time, she may have misinterpreted her vision, which ended with her determining that John's enemy, his true enemy, will be the one that will drive him to his demise, his closest ones. It is understandable that John has no bottom lines, and his time in Markarth was proof of what happens when he truly hates someone. John can make a deal with any devil if any of his loved ones were taken from him, and the man himself won't come to deny it, but for them to consider themselves to be a danger to him, it almost made him want to shout all day. And imagine it, a Dragonborn shouting from anger all day. He left Alina to rest, and went out to give Jellinar and Wulfur another piece of his mind, but he couldn't find Wulfur. In the end, Jellinar had to take double her share of John's nagging. I know we wronged you, but all we did was to take extra measurements for safety. We just thought it would be ideal if we secure our people, and, without me knowing, like that won't pose any problem? We tried to avoid problems. Avoiding problems is not how we do things in this household. John stood up and cornered Jellinar to the wall, holding her by the back of her neck. In case you were forgetting your place, there are things you are allowed and not allowed to do. One of the things you do is to tell me everything even before it happens. Or do we need to go through the basics all over again? No need. Jellinar was very well aware of what John meant by the basics. She is indeed John's lover, but there was a certain agreement between them from when he first recruited her, and if she failed him, there would always be a punishment. John let go of her slowly and took a long breath as he looked towards the room where Alina was resting. He wanted to go and comfort her, but some lessons need to be absorbed. Will Alina be all right? Jellinar asked as she tugged his arm, but she stopped herself thinking it would annoy him. John nodded after some thinking as he turned to her with the side of his face. Alina and I didn't really tell anyone, but we were trying to, having a child. He revealed something to her. Joel's eyes widened as she felt a sudden cold chill running through her. John looked at her with a sly look, but no smile. He could almost hear her heart skipping a beat or two. Heard that? Jealous? He asked. What? No, I can't be. Jellinar shook her head and hands frantically. She is your wife. I can't be jealous of her. John snorted as he turned away, giving her the cold shoulder. For me and Alina, our lifespans are now longer than most elves. It is hard for us to reproduce with our current strength. The more we grow stronger, the less likely it may happen. When Alina used her life force to take a peek into the future, she exhausted herself, lessening the chances even more. John sighed as he seemed a bit distressed. I'm sure you can do it. She will recover soon. Jellinar said, while feeling ashamed of herself for the moment of jealousy that she just experienced. It is hard for John to have a child of his own blood in his level of power. Some prices had to be paid to walk the path to heavens. Where did Wulfur escape to? John asked, finally changing the topic. He took the portal to Whiterun the moment he returned. He also took his tools and some materials from our vault. He said something about making you a weapon. Joel replied. John raised his brows. Sigh. Wolfer, unlike my wife and my girlfriend, he realized where it went wrong and ran away to return with a peace offering. Truly brothers before hoes. John said as he couldn't contain his grin. Oblivion. Jelena remembered her argument with Wolfer and wondered why it is only Wolfer is the one who can predict John to such extent. And where is Beth? She's sleeping. She was staying with Alina after Ela went out to help with something. Good child. John nodded. He sat down again and kept trying to fight the demons in his head. Winterhold was attacked during his absence, and it seemed that the enemy was aiming for his family to hurt him. The Bloodsails reappeared again after he showed mercy to their women and children. It seemed that this was a mistake after all. They also disgusted themselves skillfully and tried to cause as much damage as they could. It is only thanks to Alina that the damage was minimized. Also, a dragon was rumored to have appeared over Sarthal, but mysteriously retreated. Sarthal had its own defense system, which was even way more advanced than Winterhold's, but it seemed that there wasn't any activation to the alarm system. System, connect me to the tower control room and see if there are any sightings of a dragon. Confirmed. Downloading security feedback. Please use any nearby light screen of orb to view the content. Alrighty. John looked around and found a spare light screen nearby and channeled the feedback to it. What he saw was eye-opening, or maybe more of an eye-widening and a little bit jaw-dropping as well. A dragon nose-diving towards Sarthal with malicious intent, and when the Dwarven ballistas and Tesla towers were about to operate, the dragon directs his attention towards the tower and crash. You! John's face crumbled as he imagined the pain. That must have hurt bad. John awkwardly praised himself for leaving the Elder Scroll inside the tower. With the power the tower borrows from an Elder Scroll, it can practically be indestructible. Either way, luck played a major role in the defense this time, and it would have been very troublesome if the dragon wasn't so egoistic and tried to aim for the tower from the start. John could tell from the image of the departing dragon that its pride was hurt bigly. All right, I have heard a report that you captured that Delphine woman. Where is she? John asked. Jelena turned her eyes away. Alina set her free. She said, Oh. John raised his brows in interest. Alina thought she could make use of her. Good call? Yes. I was also in favor of her to. Just kidding. Why the hell would you let that woman walk? It's Alina. John smiled and joined his arms together, waiting to see how Joel will get herself out of this one. I think I was. Why did Alina let her go? John asked. She thought she could be an asset to flush out the dragon cult. That woman wanted so desperately to meet you, the Dragonborn you, and Alina told her to investigate the enemies that kept attacking us. Alina put a curse on her to secretly follow her moves while Miranda and Mirren are secretly keeping tabs on her. I see. So you sent Delphine, a former blade, to infiltrate the dragon cult. I think it's a good move. John nodded. You do? Jelena smiled. Don't expect me to praise you, John said coldly. Oh, okay. He dismissed her coldly to reflect on how she hid things from him and spread his body on the couch, trying to rest his busy head and close his eyes. A lot happened in High Hrothgar, and he even managed to increase his own power by doing something reckless. He tried to walk through the storm, which blocks the path up the peak of the mountain, without using the clear sky shout. His body experienced a colossal amount of pain, but the pain from that frost storm almost made him experience a breakthrough, if not for Canute interfering. Truthfully, it was madness, but thanks to it, his level is now late frozen heart formation. More to that, he received training from the Greybeards and learned their way to listen to the sky, the first phase of the Way of the Voice. Status. Name, John Dare Johnhild Firemane. Title, The Boss, Thane of Winterhold Krylan. Race, Human Nord. Age, 20. Level, Late Frozen Heart Formation. Game level, 73. Class: Master Mystic Warrior. Craft: Master Binary Enchanter. Bloodline: Fire Main. Birth Sign: Serpent Shadow. Soul Bonds: Familiar Nefertiti. Inner Dragon, Domain, Hidden Dragon Isle. Greed, Dark Matter. Wrath, Odakuro. Pride, Elder Staff. Lust, Moon Crystal. Warrior Skills: Blade, 95, Master. Blunt, 40, Adept. Polearm, 50, Adept. Shield, 43, Adept. Heavy Armor, 85, Master. Martial Arts, 81, Master. Smithing, 41, Adept. Thief Skills: Marksman, 62, Expert. Unarmed, 79, Expert. Acrobatics, 78, Expert. Stealth, 78, Expert. Light Armor, 59, Adept. Speechcraft, 91, Master. Alchemy, 42, Adept. Mage Skills: Mysticism, 98, Master. Destruction, 95, Master. Conjuration, 96, Master. Restoration, 90, Master. Alteration, 91, Master. Illusion, 85, Master. Enchanting, 99, Master. Powers: Nord. Battle Cry, active. 50% Frost Resistance. Fire Main, Fireborn, 50% Fire Resistance. Titanborn, Beast Master. Battle Spirit. Basic Aura, Madness. Advanced Aura, Red Tyrant. Manifested Aura, Astral Access. Vitality and Magicka, Equilibrium. Eternal Flesh. Disease Immunity. Serpent Birth Sign. Serpent Tyranny, compatible with all birth signs. Way of the Voice, 1/3. Hear the Wind. Bardic Knowledge. Summon noble music instruments to cause a tonal effect, active. Ozidal's Genius. Ozidal's Enchanting Knowledge. Gotfang Martial Style. Force Channeling Martial Arts. Enchanted Tattoos, 21%. Channel all energy into the tattoo to increase efficiency and bind them from leaking out or losing control. Chaos Infection. The purest form of defiance to all worldly laws. Chaos is invincible, indestructible, and very unstable. Blessings. Akatosh. Dragonborn. The gift of the dragon's blood and soul. Highest affinity to the Thursdayum. Highest affinity to the element of time. Dragon's Fire. Eternal Flame, active. Inner Dragon, not complete. Allmaker. Root of Power. 2500% Magicka, regeneration, active. Talos. Greater Amulet of Talos. Fortify, Thursdayum, 50%. Old Man's Coin. Fortify Luck. Kine, Thunderchild. 25% Empower Thursdayum. Shiagarath. Mad Champion. 2500% Vitality Regan, active. Azura. Dawn's Beauty. 50% Absorb Magic Attacks. Active. Bothia. Berserk. Take half damage and do double damage in a feral state of mind, active. Mephala. Golden Tongue. Persuasive to all beings, active. The Shadow Stone. Hide in shadows. Fortify stealth in through the shadows. Blur. Fortify speed during combat. He has indeed grown to a scary degree, yet he is still struggling with those damn dragons. To think they were flying over his turf all that time and spying from up there. Their senses must be really sharp, or they must be using some shout to buff their senses. But they indeed found out his weakness. If not for Nerina overhearing Alina when she spoke to Jelinar, he wouldn't have known, and Alina would have taken her own measures. It is thoughtful of her to do so, but to think that she would take it to the extreme and declare herself and the others a danger to him. What was she thinking? Yes, if something happened to anyone close to him, he would go insane. Not his normal insane, but he may lose it. A deal with the devil is nothing compared to the darkness of chaos that dwells inside him. True darkness is nothing Alina can see through a mere vision. He saw the darkness beyond this world, and letting it consume him would be the undoing of the hero. He would only follow the example of the self-serving Myrick. But Alina isn't wrong either. John's mentality cannot handle losing his loved ones. He will be consumed by all the negative emotions, and the Daedra will be able to manipulate him without him even resisting. But Alina's vision confirms one thing. Killing the dragons is something he will definitely do. He will fulfill his destiny and eat the dragons by his way or by a darker one. It actually worried him. Alina was right. It was better for him not to know, and Alina would have taken care of protecting his people. But this way is better. He doesn't like to be in the dark anyone. John, what interrupted his train of thoughts was the voice of Alina, who seemed to have come out of bed. John didn't reply and pretended to be sleeping. Husband, she spoke politely and walked until she reached him, then sat on the ground on her knees. He took a long breath but still ignored her. Love, what? Hungry. Go and rest, woman. I took medicine to hasten my recovery. John still didn't look at her until she went up on her feet and sat on the tip of the couch. He reluctantly gave her space and sat up beside her. John is not the kind to give the cold shoulder too often, as he just prefers to play pranks all day, but seeing this side of him made Alina realize how much he gets worried. You still angry? She asked. Not at you, John replied, as he seemed not in the mood to talk about what's bothering him. Don't worry. I am not worrying. Just don't think too much. Anything can be solved, she said as she stuck closer to him. Seeing how she looked at him with a strong eye and confident face, John had no choice but to drop the cold act. My, the cat eyes work. She spoke faintly, covering her mouth. Yes, Alina can do the era. John gave a short laugh as he shook his head. I'm sorry I couldn't welcome you when you came from Hrothgar. I trust your journey was fruitful, she said. Yes, he nodded. I heard you captured the woman Delphine and baited her to do a thing for you in exchange for meeting me. John said. Yes, she'll locate the dragon cult for us or die trying. Alina said. All right, I would have used her the same way as well. John caressed the cheek of his woman gently and brought her closer, kissing her forehead. He was not going to let anything happen to this amazing wife of his. I think I came at the wrong time, and of course, they were interrupted. Looking at who came in, it was a large woman carrying 2 kids. Mother, welcome back, son. John stood up to meet Hilda, who was smiling warmly at him, and Alina. He took Iden from her, and Thor went down on his own while looking around for anything to mess with. How are the kids? John asked. They wanted to see you, Hilda replied. Of course my cute little sister wants to see your big brother. Not that idiot, though. John ticked Iden and gave a cold look to Thor, who went to Alina. Brother, look, I drew you. Iden adorably showed John a paper that looked rather horrible, even for a 3-year-old kid. That looks like Dad. No, that's Daddy. She pointed at the other unidentified figure near the first drawing. Oh, fair enough then. John laughed and looked at Hilda. Seriously, teach the kids how to draw. It will help them draw complicated forbidden class spells by the age of 8 at best. What? No, they don't need anything like magic by the age of 8. Hilda said as she took Iden away. TSK. Typical Nords. Nerina made me draw such a formula by the age of 8. Then I'll have some serious chat with Nerina. God. John and Hilda started ranting at each other while Alina watched over the kids. Then until a servant girl came into the room and spoke. Lady Alina, there's a package for you. The servant girl said. All right, drop it there. The servant girl put a small ornate box on the table, and a note was attached on top of it. Alina managed to slip away from the 2 playful children and walked with a smile, picking up the note and opening it. River frozen blood and pain, stood she singing with her lyre. Calling winter, spring, and rain, still she lived in a dirty mire. Having a moon, not a mortal shall, so dance sweet dance like flame and fire. Alina read the words and laughed. John heard the poem and tilted his head, thinking, looks like Joel is getting deeper than usual. Alina laughed as she held up the ornate box and was about to lift the lid. John's eyes narrowed and his sense of hearing became heightened as he felt something. Tick-click. A very faint sound from the box. Alina, no! Without thinking, he took the box from her and teleported out of the house. Kaboom! Chapter 548, House Dare Rises. It was another episode of panic in Winterhold once again. The hold, which was peaceful during the Civil War, is now peaceful no more. The dragons appeared, and the cultists that attacked the city were all now public knowledge. Everyone was told the Bloodsail clan had returned, and they joined hands with the Daedra worshippers in order to exact revenge on Winterhold. It was a worrying piece of news, and it would cost Winterhold a lot of investment now. That is no longer the safe fortress it used to be, but a certain event happened one day that altered the course of events in a strange manner. John Dare's house was attacked. No one knows the exact details, but an explosion happened above John Dare's house, and the man himself was in the center of that explosion. 1 second, there was nothing above John's house, and the next, he appeared a few meters in the air, and the explosion happened. The blast didn't reach the town or the house, but everything was on fire. John's house was burned, and the man himself was nowhere to be seen. Hilda ran out of the house, carrying her 2 children, and Alina was holding the coughing Beth in her hands, screaming and crying for John. Alina was in a hysterical state. Just a moment ago, her husband was angry at her for considering herself a danger to him, and not a few minutes passed for this thing to happen. The people watched in utter fear and silence as the house of the most formidable man in the hold was completely consumed by the fire, and him most likely in it. Hilda was holding her young kids, as if the world was crumbling on her head, and the air around her felt running out of control. Everyone in Winterhold came running towards the house. Nerina and the people from the college, Jorna and the firemen that live around, Jellinar who was on duty in the company building. Seeing John's house burn, and Alina's state made them all shudder from the thought. Alina was already very tired. She could see no future, nor gather enough power. She called for anyone helplessly, but the situation was far from over. John showed as the house crumbled to rubble. He walked off the front door with a staggering stance and heavy feet, as well as some injuries around his body. Still, he was in no serious condition. His appearance was like the spring when it breaks the winter, but only for a second. By the next, John was glaring with senseless anger at everyone around him. The winter did not go away, but it rather became blizzard, and the man, whose hobbies included punching people to pieces, was now beyond angry. Just as the slight air moved by, John shouted in the entirety of Winterhold, "Nobody moves!" He cast magic senselessly to all directions. His mass paralysis spell didn't spare anyone save for Alina and his family. "John, wait!" Nerina came to stop him before doing anything reckless, but he was faster than her and was now in the middle of the street in front of his burning house. And the whole city was paralyzed. What insane spell that can cause such an effect? Nerina knew. Mass paralysis, but not to such extent. This is far beyond the master-level spells. A spell only an archwizard can cast. The man in question didn't care for such trivial matters at the moment, but he was focused on his anger, and his anger directed him to the middle of the street. Just what is he going to do? He looked around the paralyzed city as if he was looking for something, or rather someone. Paralyzed people can only look around with their eyes, and the look in their eyes showed a lot. John focused on everything around him, the sound and the light. He can hear the hearts of the people racing the moment he passed past them. That wasn't what he was looking for. The heart can never lie. Fear is natural, and it causes the heart to race, but the kind of fear John is looking for was different. He needed to find the hate, the worry, the uncanny desire to escape and to break free right at this moment. This fear can be transmitted even through the pores of one's skin, and that's what John was after. "Found you!" And he caught the perpetrator, the delivery man. Seeing the giant John Dare facing him, the man struggled, but his body was unmovable. Even the Daedra inside his head was screaming to unleash all its power, but that was not an option. John wasn't going to let the scoundrel go. Surely the dragon cult considers its followers expendables, but now that John got a fully functional dragon cultist in his hands, the situation will switch to a different tone altogether, the darkest tone John can sing. He carried the man by the neck as if he caught his prey and all of a sudden let go of his chaos in the middle of town. The chaos infection passed through the patterns of John's mystical tattoos and slowly reached his fingertips, venturing to the 8 energy points and channels, fully accessing the soul of that man. Once the chaotic ether found the vestige of the Daedra possessing that man, it completely annihilated it without a trace. The man wailed and was forced out of paralysis, as the chaos does not only erode magicka, but inflicts unimaginable harm on the living. It can't be blocked or resisted, but the same pain the man experiences is also returned to John, so it is not really the power to be abused yet for just this occasion. He took the man by the neck and snapped his finger for the whole city to break free from paralysis. The people ran away from him in fear, as this was not a John they want to stand in his way. As the house became no more, he walked towards a workshop of the company, which wasn't far away. Kicking the door open, he saw the workers and they're looking at him in total fear. "Out, all of you!" he shouted as he walked in, dragging the bomber. The workers ran out, and he threw the man across the place towards the smelter, which was turning red. Aya! Aya! No! Someone! Gods! It goes without saying that the man angered John the most, and his fate was sealed at the moment. The workshop had some of the finest tools that can bend metal into any shape or form, let alone a man. A place of fire and steel was the right location for torture, yet John wasn't looking for that. He walked to the storeroom and picked up some materials and tools. The man who was crawling towards the door was held from his leg and slammed on a metal table, almost causing all his bones to dust. He spat out blood and had a painful sensation in his lungs and back. John took a hammer and an oversized nail, then grabbed the man's hand. "My home," clank. "My family," clank. "My wife," clank. John hammered a nail deep into the hand and switched to the other one, then to the feet, doing the same and repeating the words. The man was at the edge of death, but no, that wasn't his time just yet. John may not be specialized in healing, but he is still better than some of the elite healers. The man was almost brought back to life. "No, no, let me help. Gods." "Gods? Huh." John laughed. "The divines hear you well, all right. The Daedra and the heavens hear you as well. But what makes you think they would do anything to a piece of shit? My home, my family, my wife. You wanted to take that from you blood-sail dragon cult scum. You took my house, but you know what? Let me return the favor 100 fucking folds." John spread the tools he had, which consisted of metal threads, scrap metal, leather sewing needles, and calipers. He took a blade and gutted the man open, then brought the calipers and held the flesh aside. Pride joined the fray and hovered above the man, healing him and keeping him from dying. John then sent the man to sleep to stop him from moving and kept his vitals in check. He started taking out parts of his intestines, cutting and throwing them away, before he brought a small smooth pot and filled it with oily liquid. He then added fire salts and a scroll inside the pot, then carefully sealed the pot and used a frost rune to lower its temperature before putting it in place of the man's intestines. The man would die at this rate, so John took out a red glowing heartstone, carved into the man's chest, and stuffed it instead of his heart. It is a method John studied, and it is similar to how a Briarheart warrior is created. With the right magic, he preserved the functionality of the man's vital parts and gave him an insane boost. With the thick needle and the metal thread, he closed the man's belly and moved his mouth, sealing it with a thread as well. He removed the fingers and used his knife to carve a message on the man's back. "Still alive? Tough motherfucker." There was one last thing. John used lust on the man and conveyed orders to him in a way that would make the Daedra shudder if they hear it. The man's body moved on its own and started quivering as if it was experiencing a seizure episode. He then groaned while John watched from a distance, then his body was launched from its place and ran into a wall. John simply walked to him and punched him out of the workshop. The gate was shattered as the man went flying out, but he landed like a possessed monkey and started screaming insanely. John came out after him covered in blood and gave the madman a chilling glare. "Go!" With a command, the man, or whatever he became, shrieked like a harpy, and started running like an animal out of town. The troopers who rushed towards the area were about to stop him before John signals for them not to. This move would take a few days, but what he did will surely work. The dragon cult will know how much they were mistaken when they dared to challenge John in a game of dirty fights. The situation, which went out of hand and yesterday, pulled the attention of all the clans in Winterhold. A coward attack on John's house during battle is to be expected, but a direct attack after the battle, using an exploding substance directly aiming for Alina's life, is something to not be tolerated. Also, the people of Winterhold were afraid and angry, as John's actions of paralyzing the whole town were reckless and harmed his reputation badly. Contradicting accounts started flying around, but in the end, it was proven that John did it to catch the criminal before he got away. But he still let the criminal go. No one understood how John's head worked, and a few knew the truth of what John has in store for the Dragon Cult, but the DDC gave out an official statement in the name of Boss John Dare that he used his legal authority as a thane to hold down and interrogate the people around the scene, and didn't mean for any harm to fall onto anyone. Also, as a gesture of good faith, the company will cut down next month's rent by 50% to all the people in Winterhold City. It wasn't John who came up with that, but rather the company's board of managers. This was the only way to contain the situation and appease the public before a riot began. John stayed indifferent about the whole situation, but the Temple of Kine in Winterhold came out and stated that John Dare, husband of Sybil Alina, is a man of faith and a hero to the people. His actions were made in a moment of weakness and anger. The man himself didn't even try to appease anyone, as he was having a very bad day himself. Aside from Alina crying all day for the house that was completely lost and Nurina nagging him for recklessly using his magic, he had to look after the people close to him more. The blood sales are back, and they act like rabid dogs. He was sure he finished off all their men, but they ended up joining the Dragon Cult and causing him such a headache. He also spent the day sending agents from Team Zero to try to track down the remnants of the accursed clan. According to the Fireman's network of connections, these were not just the blood sales, but more than just one clan. It is like they are all a gathering of the enemies which John and the Firemen's annihilated during the past 5 years. Someone really did a fine job tracking down all his enemies and making a dream team of Anti-Dare. Other than that, John started to work on something which powers the Dragonstone and tracks down all the dragons around Skyrim. If that isn't possible, then he would at least keep the dragons away from Winterhold skies. He had all the ingredients he needed: mysterious device in the shape of a tower, an elder scroll, an immortal dragon horn, a dragonstone, and all the magicka he needs. What needed to be done was some sort of sensory system that detects dragons and sends minor, annoying shockwaves to jam their senses and make them fly away. It all depended on manipulating the runes and all the complicated laws and fucking trash. John threw the books in his hand and roared his frustration out. 1,000 thoughts were cramped up in his mind. Confusion, hatred, uneasiness, stress. Alina was weakened badly, and he almost lost her yesterday. His sister, brother, and mother as well. The thing that Alina did really upset him, but he somehow managed to let it pass, but now he can no longer overlook it. If his enemies can no longer harm him, they will indeed harm his family and friends in order to make him suffer. But that enemy is too focused and keeps targeting him where it hurts systematically. It is as if they know more about him than what they gave out weight. John's mind froze for a second as a certain possibility came to mind. He had that idea that caused him greater distress and made his stomach growl. He was really angry. That's a face I don't see that often. Yet a voice cut his line of thoughts. John turned with a glare, about to shout on whoever that is. His orders were clear that he can't be disturbed. Still, he found that who came to disturb him is no one other than John Rad, one of the few who doesn't care what John thinks. "What?" John asked. "You look like you were bitten in the arse by a horker," John Rad said. "Glad you can tell," John replied and looked away. "John Hild, you were doing? For heaven's sake, I don't want to talk about it. I said I am sorry about paralyzing the town already," John said rather impulsively. "What? No," John Rad scoffed at. That was the best move anyone could have pulled. I was drinking with your father-in-law as he pulled up a tankard. Just as he got paralyzed, the whole mead was all spilled on him. Ah ha ha ha. Johnrad laughed heartily and seemed very pleased for a moment. Well, I was saying you were doing a good job looking after everyone else and not yourself. Johnrad said, You just need to put your mind to rest, son. Johnrad seemed concerned and made John see sense. It is just, somehow I have that feeling of unease. I said, Relax. Today, you save your mother, your siblings, and your wife from certain doom. You did more than well. Johnrad patted John's back. I am as proud as anyone can be of their son being such a fine young man. Thanks. John nodded, taking the compliment of Johnrad. Despite what happened, Johnrad was the only one who wasn't as stressed as the rest of the people around him. See, when everyone is on edge, you boy take it all in mind as well. It gets to you, doesn't it? Johnrad commented. What should I do? My job, my responsibility. John replied. All right. I was just coming over to say that you and your wives can sleep over in our place. Johnrad added. Now we're good. Sure. We have places in the tower. I'll remodel some rooms to fit a wing for us to live there. Maybe expand on some of the empty rooms and make a residence under the library here. You'll move to the tower? Great. Johnrad was taken aback as he looked around. Currently, John was in the upper section of the Dare Tower. This place is a grand library and John's personal gallery, but there were a few unused rooms in the tower. If John moved some walls and remodeled the place, he can have a new place to live in the secure tower, but he will be moving everything from Winterhold City to Sarthal. It kind of felt distasteful, but after all those years, it felt sad for him to lose his house. Either way, things had to change eventually. John looked forward to the day he strikes the dragon cult right in the heart and takes down their mastermind. John held. When are we going to strike the cult? Johnrad asked as he completely changed his tone. Soon. I have people after them, and I did a certain something. John said. All right. Johnrad nodded. Let's do this only the two of us. A father-slash-son weekend massacre plan. It sounded less intimidating that way, but what the two had in mind for those who endangered their family was nothing but sure doom. Chapter 549, The Eye of Magnus. Some of you must have watched Epic Nate's video on the Eye of Magnus, and while he got some stuff right, more than 50% of what he assumed is not even solid from the Kamal invasion to the purpose of the Eye. I will put down my theory, which is not 100% right either, but it will at least complement the story until the official purpose of the Eye is revealed by Yeso or TS6, hopefully. Nice place you got here, Nurina said as she walked by to John. Thanks. John smiled and nodded at her. It was a starry night in Winterhold, and the winds were fair. The upper section of the tower was mostly a library, but after John's house was burnt, he transformed the unused portion of that library into a large apartment. More to it, as the upper section of the tower, it was surrounded by the roof of the middle section, and it was vast enough to fit a small herb garden and some benches. John would stand at the railing of the roof, gazing down at the entire Winterhold. It is better here, he said. You feel like you own the world. Nurina nodded. I feel like I do. You shouldn't. She refuted. John remained silent to see what was Nurina's purpose in saying those words. He looked at her as she gazed up at the sky. Many years ago, when I met you in the chaos, I never dreamt that you would actually be my student, let alone my child, let alone one of the youngest arch-wizards in history, she said. John frowned. I am not. You met the qualifications. She cut his words. Yesterday's spell was an army-scale spell. People of such caliber are treated as superpowers of their own in the magic community. I thought you quit the magic community. John said. I did. You were part of it, like it or not, and the moment you were declared my student 5 years ago, it caused a stir. 2 years ago, when you battled the Thalmor and slew 10 arch-wizard in a demi-chim state, you caused an even greater stir. With the prophecy around you, the others became even more curious. When news of the scale of your magic reaches far, you will be in a more curious spotlight. John, You are underestimating your own power. Seriously? John gave a long, tired sigh. I don't want to deal with anyone anytime soon. Sooner or later, you will. Right now, to the purpose I am here for. Alf told me to test you. Nerina said. Alf? All right. What does the arch-wizard ritual look like this time? He asked. No rituals? Nerina shook her shoulders. There isn't a ritual for everything, you know. Seriously? No dancing naked around the fire? No long walks on the beach? No slaying a few goats and summoning up a Daedra to beat him up? Why are you so disappointed? You know that I love rituals, Nerina. Everything gets so mysterious and nonsensical when you involve the word ritual. No one will even question it. I see. So that's how it is done. Sadly, there is no definitive way to understand whether one is an arch-wizard or not. You always possessed the raw power, but all you needed was control, and now that you have crossed the milestone, you have to impress me so that I graduate you. John blinked a few times and looked at her. Graduate me? John asked. What's the point? I will always be your student. It is important to me. Nerina showed a rare resolve as she was firmly making her stance in the matter. At least let me postpone it, John pleaded. No can do, young man. Nerina refused. It was clear that she was happy, judging by the wide smile on her face. John's graduations meant that there is nothing more she can teach him, and he is independent from her now. Of course, as a master and student, their bond is eternal, but this was a milestone they had to cross. So all I need to do is to impress you? John asked. She nodded. He pointed at the tower of music which he designed and built to be a machine that can harness the tonal energy and use it in bizarre ways. Nerina shook her head, implying that is not what she was looking for. Okay, any suggestions? John helplessly asked. Nerina thought for a while before offering John a hand. He obediently took her hand, and the two disappeared in a poof. Where they appeared was the Hall of the Elements in the College of Winterhold. Despite being late at night, the place was filled with masters and scholars. John waited for his senses to adjust after the teleportation, but someone approached them right off. Glad you two joined us. The speaker was Loneth, the Daedrologist who is friends with Nerina. Yes, we have arrived. You can all go home now. We will solve the mystery, Nerina said as she shooed away the other mages who wanted to greet her. John greeted Loneth, then shifted his attention to the object in the center of the hall. He smiled as he took a few steps towards it. The Eye of Magnus. Fascinating, isn't it? Nerina asked. Indeed. Both John and Nerina stood forward facing the Eye of Magnus closely, as there was nothing threatening about the large orb that spun around itself mid-air. Its appearance was a marvel. Nerina, nice of you to join us. From behind, someone stood ahead and spoke casually to Nerina. It didn't take a split of a second for the back of John's hand to land on the face of that speaker. The Altmare had his face squished against John's hand, as if he was hit by a battering ram before landing a couple of meters away on his ass. What did you just call her, shitface? John turned to Encano with nothing but disdain towards his very existence. The chattering in the room instantly quietened as everyone caught sight of what just happened. John Dare is a rare sight in the college nowadays, but every time he farts, the bards across Winterhold sing about him. Meanwhile, Encano was the Thalmor advisor, which was forced on the college by the regulations of the magic community. The Thalmor are a great force in the world of magic, and they at least have an eye or two in every institution nowadays. John Dare. Encano realized what hit him. Only one mage has a hand that can hit like the stomp of a mammoth, and it is unquestionably John Dare. Actually, he knew it may have been a fire main since there are a number of them attending the college now, but he never would have guessed this reaction. It is Thane John Dare, shit-face. John joined his hands together in a display of complete tyranny. Nerina turned around with interest at the sight, and not stopping John at all. Encano was a source of nuisance to many mages, Nerina included, but if she did something similar to what John did, her cousin would nag her to oblivion. John, on the other hand, is a force of nature. What would the Archmage do? Cut his salary? What is all this ruckus about? And here he arrives, the Archmage. Uncle, John smiled and waved his bloody hand for Savos Aran, who was surprised as John never called him such a word before. He saw the blood on John's hand and Ancano struggling on the ground with a bloody nose and a messed-up face. Thane John, the old Dunmare held his head from the sudden headache that assaulted him. "Oh, John, look what have you done. Your uncle has more gray hair than before now." Nurina shamelessly joined the act. "It is because of you." Archmage Savos finally snapped and shouted at Nurina, who made an innocent, sad face from injustice. Archmage Savos, this member of your college has assaulted me openly. This is an act of aggression towards an ambassador from." And Kano went up staggering and started complaining to the Archmage, who rolled with his eyes away. "What a bitch. At least have the decency and punch back at me. Well, keep wagging your tail, shit face." John added more fuel to the flames. Seeing Ancano being humiliated caused an episode of delightfulness around the college scholars. A handful of people would talk back to Ancano not fearing his tantrums, but only Adair can put him in such a situation. "Master Ancano, you are bleeding in my hall. Please, let me accompany you to a healer." In such a situation, the manager of the college grounds, Mirabelle Irvine, interferes to solve the problem before the Archmage's hair turns all white. Ancano didn't accept the hand she extended and turned away, leaving the hall. "This isn't over. It will be reported," he said, but a voice interrupted him. "Hey, shitface." John spoke and pointed at Nurina. How to address her? John's wide grin coolly faced the twisted anger that is on the bloody face of Ancano. The elf wanted to say something that gets him back any face, but suddenly, John's aura was already as if it was about to slice his throat. This was in the Thalmor report. John Dare's irregular battle spirit. What is this feeling? How could he feel as if his heart was about to explode? John Dare's aura is indeed self-empowering and causes his opponents to act irrationally, but this is not irrationality. This is pure fear and helplessness. What is this behind him? That's something that is not to be called an aura anymore. Basic, advanced, manifested. These are the known stages of battle spirit, but that. Ancano could swear on the name of every Edra that he could see a terrifying figure standing in the aura surrounding John. How can it be? How is this a thing? Why are the people around him not reacting to it? This powerful aura should affect them as well, right? A beast? A monster? A dragon? Why is there a dragon in John Dare's aura? The rumors about the dragon's return are all true, but what's in front of him can't be explained. Shit face. John's voice woke Ancano from his frozen state. What would you call her next time? The question was provocative indeed, but the answer was if it got imprinted on Ancano's brain before John would even force him to say it. Mistress Nirina, excuse my rudeness, Ancano said with a slight bow before he immediately retreats from the Hall of the Elements, leaving everyone dumbfounded. That included John. Mistress? Nirina frowned. How distasteful. Actually, I was going to force him to say it. John replied, rubbing his chin. Then again, imagining you in a black leather suit is a bit nothing. Nirina closed her eyes and turned away, but John felt rather consumed in a few ideas as he carefully watched his inner aura while distancing himself from the group. After the argument was over, a conference about the Eye of Magnus began. The conference ended, but John didn't participate in it with a single word. He was still lost in his thoughts, thinking about various things while feeling something strange. It was almost dawn, and everyone started leaving the hall for Nirina and John. John was sitting on a step on the side of the hall as Nirina approached him. Not going home tonight? Nirina asked John, bringing him back to Nirn. HM? No, I want to give Alina some time. You go ahead and join Faralda. John replied. She is in solitude. Oh, sorry. Totally forgot. John apologized as he stood up, stretching his stiff back. What's on your mind all of a sudden? Nirina asked. Not sure, to be honest. Just something is strange, John said as he didn't know how to put it. All right, let's put your mind to use instead of letting it rot over useless stuff, Nirina said and pointed to the eye. What do you think? John looked at the floating orb and cracked his neck as he approached it. He knocked on it twice and nodded. Right. Are you testing a watermelon? Nerina refuted. Heh, well, I don't care about the eye either way. How much does the college know? John asked. All we know is that some texts describe something called the Eye of Magnus, but they were too obscure. We think there are other texts about it, but they were stolen. TSK. Typical College of Winterhold. John said. All right, smartass. Tell me what you know. Nerina put her hand on her side, smiling. Yes, my dear mother. John cleared his throat. This orb thing is but of course the very eye which belonged to the architecture of Mundus Magnus. John said as he introduced the orb, making some light effect shine on it. Nerina sighed from the impudence of her dork student, who didn't add anything new. I'm going to bed. She turned around and walked away. Wait, didn't you hear what I just said? John said as he put a sly smile. This is the literal eye of the literal Magnus, the deity of magic. There are no metaphors in the naming. Nerina's feet froze on the ground, and she had the most shocked of faces. Turning around, she asked John carefully. Say that again. Dear mother, this very short version. I'm Magnus literal, bragging. Are you saying this stone is a literal part of an Ada? Nerina asked for the third time. Yep, the heart of Lorcan was also a literal part of Lorcan, and it became a stone. John nodded. This was big. Many artifacts can be attributed to an ET Ada, but when it is a literal part of an Ada, it means that a world-shaking event will happen with its appearance. But after the shock, naturally comes the denial. Impossible. Nerina scoffed him. Suit yourself. John shrugged his shoulders. His response just now proved her wrong. After the denial comes the questioning. Prove it. Hold my cat. John especially held Nefertiti out of his shadow for this situation and put on a pair of reading glasses as he brought out a book from the cube. Where to begin there? John found the passage he needed. I found this ancient text in Elsewhere when I was doing some archaeology. You stole it? From the Thalmor? Okay. You can't call that a crime. Even the main let me copy it. Yeah. As honorable as ever, son. What does it say? Here it goes. Magrus, the sun deity, commonly known as the cat's eye or the third eye of Azura. He serves as a daily reminder of her wrath. It is written that when Magrus fled from Bothra and Lorcage, he could only see out of one eye and fell into the moonshadow. There Azura judged him as too full of fear to rule a sphere, and she tore out his other eye. Magrus left to the heavens blinded, but Azura made of his eye a stone to reflect the Varliant's gate. This is the ether prism, which opens at dawn and closes at dusk. Show me that. Nerina exchanged Nefertiti for the book and started reading from it on her own. John took Nefertiti and started playing with her as she acted lazily and tried to catch his hand before he tickles her. Meanwhile, Nerina skimmed through the book and realized what's important. So, an actual eye of an Etata transformed by the Daedra Azura into an artifact that has the power to affect something called the Varliants. I know this word. Nerina muttered. What is it? John asked. It appeared in a few texts before, but it was rather a mystery to many, yet it is described here as the ether prism. I can translate that into one thing. Nerina explained. Go on. Ether is basically the power of Etherius, which the magic itself originates from, and the sun and stars are rifts too. Prism is the purest and thickest form of energy, almost in a solid state. Ether prism can be called origin magica. John narrowed his eyes and contemplated. The magica of an Etida, so the eye hosts the raw power of an original spirit. Yes, or at least that's the closest thing to the truth. But Magnus is not just any Etiada. It is the one who fashioned the whole mortal world. The text says that the ether prism in the eye opens the gate of dusk and dawn, which means this eye of Magnus may be able to control the sun, or rather, control the magica flow going in and out from the sun. Fuck. Nerina had a cluster chain of realizations. Hey, language, John said as he covered Nefertiti's ears. You fool. You beautiful fool. Nerina was delighted all at once. This device, gulp, it can give more magicka straight from the source, or it can reverse the flow back to the source. It can take away all the magicka from Mundus. Take away. But the magicka is everything in this world. John tilted his head. Shadow told me that lower-grade worlds need energies like magicka, mana, and chi to simply keep the fabric of reality together. If the energy is taken away, it means either the reality is becoming more stable or the world is dissolving. Fuck. Shit. Nerina and John looked at each other in solemnness. You knew this from the start? She asked. I knew the Eye of Magnus, if fucking bad news, not the magic off switch. John replied. What should we do with it? Nerina started to walk around back and forth. Nothing. John said. Nothing. It is not our position to act. Fate is on Alina's side, and I left this for her. We can play ball with the eye for all I care about, but never use it. John said. But, Alina, I trust my wife. She can get emotional, but she is wise. Wiser than both of us. John didn't give Nerina more room to speak. Fine, but there is one more thing that is annoying me. Nerina spoke. And it is? Look at the eye's surface. These symbols are really annoying the chaos out of me. She said. Chaos jokes now? All right. Well, I think I figured out the origin of the script. John said. Enlighten me? Nerina urged him to speak. This whole thing is called Valriance. It is a strange word, but I think it is composed of Valra and Radiance. He said. Valra means star in Elven. Star Radiance? Isn't this similar to this long-dead technique used by the Ayleid to enchant? She tried to remember. Correct. John clapped his hands, but this script in the eye is much more advanced. It is the ultimate script ever written. I know because I use the most simplified version of it in my enchantments. You mean your crazy binary enchanting? She asked. John nodded mischievously. My binary script consists of zeros and ones. It is hard to learn, but direct to apply once you know the math. This script on the Eye of Magnus is more like, it directly applies the fundamentals of my binary enchanting in an enchanting code that has no limitations. John inhaled and exhaled before continuing. This is a divine script, the writing of the Etiada, or how I love to call it, the coding language of the world. John's realization was right, and made Nerina think and think again. An enchanting method that transcends John's binary script in ability and is more convenient in difficulty. On two different notes, if this method was used with magicka, it will make insanely strong enchantments. But if it was used with origin magicka, Ether Prism, it can actually reshape the world itself. This was just too absurd and very exciting. But how do we figure out the divine script? It is too complex. Nerina asked. Oh, I happen to have seen this script before. John said. Nerina's face hardened as she held John by his arms and unintentionally dug her nails into him. Where? She asked. John put on a nasty smile. Well, I have a dragon cult I am pursuing right now, but I guess I can spare my dear mother some time. John said as he held a black book that had traces of divine script on it. I haven't had an otherworldly trip with you since the chaos. How about a trip to Apocrypha? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.